This is so much more than a lost civilization. This touches on reformatting our understanding of not only history, but science, even religion, understanding of the universe. It's very significant what I uncovered. They left the most advanced ancient code. In order to find it, you had to be basically an initiate of mystery schools. And then what happens to humanity after Gilgamesh? Empires rise, fighting and battling each other, and we go to the darkest time in human history. The two most important symbols, from Bolivia, Peru, to Van, Turkey, and I have them all in one place as the entire temple layouts themselves. The three doors, they're essential for understanding of the universe. The middle door is physical reality. The left door is the underworld, or Duat, and the right door is the celestial realms. This is a blueprint model for not only human ascension, but the universe itself. Aynais' flower is a solar flower to the above, the celestial. The underwater ruins are seeds, because that's where the origin of nature is. It's the underworld. Kefkalesi, tetrahedrons, structure of physical reality. Each temple is a manifestation they created of the structure of reality itself. A word to unlock everything else, and nobody on this planet spoke it. And now I'm about to give it back to humanity. The word is
It has been 3 months since you've been on our show, and I usually don't have guests back that quickly. Actually, let me just pause and rewind.
No, 3 months since I did a show, not on your show.
Did a show, but you were on our show about 3 months ago.
8 months ago, I think.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
dude.
it was not. I was living in California still.
Oh wow. Okay. That's like a time warp.
I know.
Then
I
for
know
me.
it is.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought it was much more recently than that.
It's actually been a little while, believe it or not.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, this is really good timing then, because we were talking about your trip on the show, and you were heading to Turkey, and you had, you were so excited about it, and it was a great episode, and you got everybody pumped up about your trip, and so now the follow up of what did you learn, and it's kind of like the most mind blowing thing that you're going to dedicate your life to what you've learned, essentially, right?
I never imagined what I was exploring was going to lead to what it did. I can't emphasize that enough. So the first place I want to start and just express is that when I began this journey of exploring these similarities, these undeniable connections in 3 continents at least around the world, I knew that there was something important there. And of course, that was why we were traveling and filming, the documentary, which we're still in the middle of, and I'll give an update on what happened with that and where that is now. But essentially, when I last did that show with you, I was about to head to film in Turkey and in Cambodia. So that was where we left off.
Right.
Back, I think might have been like April, I think.
Okay.
Way back then.
Hard to believe it's been that long, but
I know it.
Yeah.
Right? Time flies.
Yeah.
So I have, just jumping forward a little bit, and I'll explain everything in between, but I have not done a podcast in 3 months because I had to publish this discovery before I could talk about it. It is that big.
And that's like the longest you've ever gone without doing a podcast.
I've never done anything like that before. I was basically an isolated monk in my little cabin on a lake I live in far northern Michigan, literally in the middle of nowhere. And so I used that time, and it ended up going down a road that I never imagined, right? Don't underestimate the ability of having complete tranquility and quiet and peace in nature for long periods of time, and what that can do.
Right.
So
no TV at your
I don't
home?
even own a TV or a microwave or anything. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
I just want to give people a feel for Matt LaCroix. Yeah.
So
Matt, I guess before we continue, just in case people are new and they didn't catch that first episode, maybe just a brief introduction of yourself and kind of what you're all about and what you do. Yeah.
So I'm a researcher, writer, but also I dabble in a lot of, understanding masonry of megalithic structures, ancient symbols, understanding like Mesopotamian tablets and the stories of all that. It's a wide arc that I like to cover. And it's what it is essentially exploring a lost chapter of our history. Where we were at that time, back when we first did our show, was we need to try to find evidence of a lost civilization. We need to try to see if we can prove that it was real. I do believe that conversation is over. I do. And I think there's an entirely new conversation that is going to come out of that, which is where we're going to be going in this show, is first laying out what we've done, what we found, and then what the implications are for that. So it's not the arc of discovery of what I'm about to go over and explain is not simple. It's incredibly complex. So everybody listening to this right now, you might want to go get a snack, something to drink, and buckle up, because this is going to be a journey. And the funniest thing is that there's a term that a lot of people use, which is going down the rabbit hole, right? And a lot of people don't like that term because, no, when you try to understand things, you ascend and you go up. So why would you use that? This conversation will be that rabbit hole, because instead of just going up, we're also going to go down. And so that's going to be very interesting for people, I think.
So you haven't done a podcast in 3 months. You've had your world flipped completely upside down from what you've discovered, and you're here today, and you're sharing this information with the world. So if I could just ask, because I'm just so grateful that you've chosen Limitless to come on to and to share this information with the world. What was it? What was it about this show that made you want to kind of do that?
Well, I know you, and having spent time getting to know you and talking to you and have a lot of conversations, and you have a level of understanding that is necessary in certain components that I need. I needed somebody that I could express this to who has an understanding of what Hermeticism, fractal geometry, consciousness. I needed somebody like that.
Gotcha.
That's essential for this to convey this message correctly. And so I want to be able to lay this out in a way where we can expand and include all the necessary components to understand what this is, but we can't go too fast and we can't jump, because if we do, we will lose people.
Right.
This is so much more than a lost civilization. This is a full paradigm shift. And this touches on reformatting our understanding of not only history, but science, spirituality, natural law, Hermeticism, even religion, understanding of the universe. It's very significant what I uncovered. And to give a little bit of a backstory about where we went and what was happening during this exploration is, again, I had been exploring these hotspots, we'll call them, where there was the same symbols being carried over, the same styles of building. There was a direct connection that seemed to be very apparent between Van, Turkey, the region in eastern Turkey, with Peru and Bolivia and Cambodia. And then the big one that broke this entire thing open was Egypt. And that conversation and the means for which that led to the road that it did is pretty extraordinary, actually. So where we left off, I then jumped on a plane after we talked, and we went in Turkey, and it was absolutely incredible, the filming. And I got to dive down to the underwater ruins and touch them. And to be a part of that was absolutely extraordinary for my life. And now, knowing what I do compared to then, there's even more appreciation. So we filmed at the underwater ruins. We dove down with famous diver Tossin Jalen and the whole crew with the National Guard there and everything, right? The Coast Guard. It was quite an event, actually.
And on the team with you was...
We had Dr. Robert Schock. We had Arturo De Leon, Lidio De Leon. We had a whole camera crew and team, along with Martin Young, and I was also with Paul Wallace was joining us as well. And then we had archaeologist Omer Tanyuruk. And so that was the Turkey group, but there are other individuals and experts that have been part of other regions. So we have a pretty large team of at least 10 people that is on that. So we filmed for the first time in history, Aynais. Nobody's ever filmed there.
That's incredible, man.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Especially with what I know now.
Yeah.
And then we filmed Chavus Tepe, we filmed Kefkalesi, and then, of course, the surrounding areas. And after that, which was a huge success, we went and did Cambodia. And that was an incredible adventure, going to these specific areas that most people know, Angkor Wat, Angkor Thom complex. It's actually the largest series of ancient sites in the world, collection there. And it was built by what we call the Khmer Empire. Problem is that there are very specific sets of temples within that are far older and are already actually have been acknowledged as being pre-Khmer, but nobody really has explored that. And so those symbols, I was finding the same step pyramid design symbols above doorways, the same designs across the entire world in the jungles of Cambodia. Same thing as Von Turkey.
Oh shit! You got
Same
pictures?
thing as Peru.
You got pictures of all this stuff?
Oh,
I mean,
all of
yeah.
it's laid out. All
Yeah.
of it's the documentary has all of it filmed in there.
Yeah. Is the documentary? Where's the documentary at?
Well, that's part of this whole conversation because when we finished Cambodia, this is a great segue into all of this. We were done filming. We had filmed in 6 countries. Huge success, right? I couldn't have been more proud and happy with how it turned out. We were done, and we were just entering the post-processing phase, where I was going to fly and do fly to a team of doing all the editing, all the narration, right? We were right on the edge of that. We had meetings going. We were in conversations to do that. Meanwhile, I'm about 60% through my new book. So there's where things were. This is early November. So we're jumping through the summer, filming in all those locations. So here we are in November, and this is where everything changed. From that point, everything had to shift, everything had to adjust. If anything, people look at my life and think that it was very exciting during that, and it was, but I can't even describe how exciting the last 3 months have been. The last 3 months have been a whirlwind, to say it in the best way possible. Because of this discovery in Egypt, we had to delay the entire documentary. And because we need to film there now. And so the delay is good because in early May, we will be going with the whole team, including Dr. Robert Schock, to the Giza Plateau to film this discovery and then add it into the whole thing. Now, the reason I haven't done another podcast in 3 months is because I had to finish the book. I had to publish before I talked about this. It's that big, it's that significant. It lays out an entire cohesive model. And so once that was done, which I have never busted my butt that hard in my life.
I had a little bit of confusion last night when we were talking at dinner about the book because I couldn't possibly imagine that you could have finished a book so quickly. I mean, you essentially got back then from Turkey and finished the book, and now it's already available to buy on Amazon.
I was doing 12-hour days.
Yeah.
Full 12-hour days because I had to get this done.
Yeah.
And everybody was waiting, and I couldn't talk about and couldn't do any podcast until I did. And so I really needed to work hard, and I did. I basically just isolated myself, and I got the book done, and I'm very proud of how it turned out. It's called The Missing Key, Ancient Code of a Lost Civilization, and it lays this entire thing out. Models the entire codex, timelines, the whole journey, all the pictures, graphics. It is the journey and the discovery all in one. Now, why that was so important is that what we're about to talk about is not something that other people have discussed. This is brand new, cutting edge, to the point where this will have major ramifications on a lot of things. This is not something that, and I don't say this in an arrogant way, I say this in a completely objective way. This is not something that can be disproved. I did not make it. I did not create it. I simply found it. They left it for us. Now, what do I mean they? Imagine you had a civilization that existed for roughly 18,000 years. And they mastered their understanding of everything in ways that we don't understand. Imagine a civilization that's almost completely the opposite of us, where instead of building through industrial means and disconnecting to the earth and creating a world that has no connection to nature and the universe, they did not do anything like that. Imagine the very core of their civilization was moral philosophy and understanding of natural law in the universe and how everything functioned, and then their place within that as a steward in all of those things. Now imagine that civilization mastering everything, but they needed to leave all that behind, because the most profound thing that I've discovered and understood about this is that they were masters of also tracking cycles. And I believe that they knew their own demise was coming, which is so sad and poetic, is they realized that they were all going to be destroyed.
The civilization was going to collapse, and
not
almost
collapse,
everyone would
be
die.
destroyed.
Okay.
Not collapse from their own means, but literally be destroyed from massive catastrophes on the earth. So what do they do?
Well, how did they know?
because they were tracking cycles and they knew of previous cycles that had already occurred.
And what was the cycle?
The cycle is that the Earth goes through catastrophic periods of reset, where you're talking about events that I believe are mostly related to the sun, CME events, coronal mass ejection events, in which the magnetosphere of the Earth is altered, disrupted for a certain period of time, which causes massive upheavals. And not only earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, but we're also talking about climatic events and even things like radiation in certain parts of the Earth that would have been extreme. And I think that really lends itself to understanding massive underground cities like Derinkuyu and Kaymakli in southern Turkey, of a place that you would need to literally survive for enormous amounts of time. And that's what I believe all of this connects back, except for the sad realization is that I think most of them did not make it.
Do you think that you know what that cycle was? Is it that 12,000 year cycle, or is it what's the cycle time?
The cycle is based on very interesting interactions of interglacial and postglacial periods. That seems to be a huge part of this. But there are other factors as well, including the first event that I was tracking that's very well known if anyone wants to understand it. It's 41,500 years ago. It's called the Adams event or Lost Champ event. That is a benchmark for this, because I'm convinced without a doubt that that is what the original first deluge that's discussed is. There have been multiple. Remember, when Solon was in Egypt talking to the great priest down there, Sanchez, he says to Solon, you Greeks remember one deluge or one destruction, but there have been many, mostly of water and fire. Now, this civilization knew their demise was coming. And so they left the most advanced ancient code ever left before in history. And it was so complicated and so high level that in order to find it, you had to be basically an initiate of mystery schools. So what does that mean? Mystery schools are the ancient education system that once existed before Christianity and before monotheistic religions as the benchmark for what you needed to do to understand how everything worked. And they believed that knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge into wisdom to turn the self into a temple that's a reflection of the temple outward, which is society. They believed that the necessary components of that was understanding all aspects of how the universe worked and how everything functioned, especially cycles. It was essential to them. And so when I went down the road of really spending years and years studying Hermeticism, natural law, and a lot of these very esoteric, archaic things that are mostly gone now, it was the reason why I was able to find what I did. I can't emphasize that enough. That was why this was missed by archaeologists. That's why this was missed by a lot of very intelligent minds, because you had to be able to look through the lens of their world, their philosophy, their understanding. And it was a very interesting journey. And we can segue into how that started and what that discovery was.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do that. I want to maybe before we get there, just paint a little a total clear picture for the audience of what did this civilization look like? Like, where did they begin? I guess, the Le Champ, I think you're saying like 42,000 years ago, the Le Champ or Adam excursion was around that same time period. So when do you think the civilization started, and then kind of what was kind of happening around that time?
So we don't actually know the date of when they began, but we do know of when the first iteration was destroyed. And so if I was going to give a ballpark of my understanding with the complex timeline I've created, it's somewhere around 45 to 50,000 years ago.
Okay.
When exactly, I don't know.
And you've been consistent with that number for a long time.
That was accurate. Yeah. I do believe I was accurate on that as well. But that doesn't, the implications that come out of that are even far more significant. But it gives us a time frame.
And so, I mean, back then, 40 plus thousand years ago, there's Denisovans on the planet, right? So, I mean, what percentage of, I guess, what percentage of Homo sapiens were a part of this a part of this civilization, and was it everybody, or were there, assume there were, outliers or outskirts or people who lived, off the grid or whatever. And then, when you look at another species of hominoids at that time, like how does that fit into? I guess I'm just trying to visualize the world at the beginning of this civilization.
I think the first thing we need to do is reformulate a few things.
And I guess to add, I'm sorry, but it also during the Ice Age, right?
Yes.
So now we've got, it's not like an equatorial civilization completely necessarily, but there's a lot more ice on the planet, and so people are going to be forced more towards those Egypt and Turkey and
deglaciated areas. So the first thing is, I don't think it's that much different than we have now, where we have modern civilization at a peak of its time, which I don't agree with. But look at today. You go to parts of the Amazon or parts of islands off of India, and there are cultures that live with none of the things that we have. I think that same dynamic existed then too. I'm not suggesting, and if anything, it probably existed in a more extreme way, where most of the world probably was Denisovians and other kinds of humans. Well, something occurred in ancient Mesopotamia with the lowering of kingship and this emergence of the first civilizations. And we've talked about that. And that's, a lot of people will coin that as the Sumerians, right? And I've discussed that in a lot of my work. And that was where a lot of this began. Now, I want to just start out by laying this foundation down. I have made some mistakes in my understanding. I want to clear those up now.
Okay.
As we're going along, there are things that I've had to reformat and understand in a different way, because of a lot of what this discovery is and how it entails. And it connects everything. It actually goes all the way back to Zayasudra. Little did I know, but I had been exploring it without even realizing it. And it has to do with these divine me's that were lowered down and during Zayasudra's time that he talks about. I don't want to jump around here too much. I want to try to stay, if I can, in a chronological order.
Yeah, of course.
To understand. But as I've been going along with this, there have been some things I've had to change. The first thing is the Sumerians had no writings. That's a big one. That's going to be a bomb for people. How could the Sumerians had written about their own destruction if they were destroyed? It doesn't work that way. They had no writings because they're part of the same civilization that they're an extension of that. They're an early iteration of what became something much greater. They didn't believe in leaving writings behind because, like Socrates said, Socrates felt that writings could be misinterpreted very easily.
Are you saying the Sumerians, so the Sumerian tablets, are you saying
they're not Sumerian?
They're not Sumerian.
I know, we're going to drop some bombs here.
But they're much older than that, you're saying?
They're younger.
Oh,
so
okay,
we're going to drop some bombs here.
Okay. We're
going to need to reformat some things here. What archaeologists think is Sumerian is not. It's actually Neo-Akkadian. There are no Sumerian writings that exist. They did not write anything down. What happened was Gilgamesh, during the time period of Uruk and the reemergence of Mesopotamia, he became part of what's called the Neo-Akkadian civilization. Now, Ryan, can you pull up that slide on Uruk and the describing Uruk and the Sumerians for a minute? If you look up, this is critical place to start. Super important for us to lay this down. So when you pull up and you look up, you just type in, here we go, right here, right? You just do a simple search. What time period is Gilgamesh? Was he Sumerian? What time period, what was Uruk part of, right? And look at what their answers are here. They say that Gilgamesh and Uruk are part of the Sumerian civilization. You see that? Except none of the tablets and none of the chronologies say that at all. They all say that the first 5 cities, Eridu to Shuruppak, was far before Gilgamesh. And we know that because Gilgamesh goes to seek out the Noah Zayasudra figure to go find out and discover all these things and brings things back with him, which we'll get into.
Yep.
Now, that's the first huge mistake in archaeology. And I want to point it out. I mean, we're talking about a massive mistake. They're categorizing Gilgamesh and Uruk as being Sumerian. We're talking about at least 10,000 year difference. At least. Then I want to reiterate that enough. I believe, and I can prove, that Zayasudra and the first Eridu to Shuruppak civilization was at least 42,000 years old. at least. Now, how old is Gilgamesh and Uruk? 6,500 years. Now you understand the scope of difference here. How do we know that? Well, Ryan, can you pull up the Death of Beall games tablets with where Gilgamesh goes to see Zayasudra? Here we go. And I love this. I just made this right before the show.
Yep.
I think people are going to love this.
And by the way, I gotta just thank you for taking all the time that you did to make all of these slides.
No,
these are like nobody's ever seen these slides before that they're going to see on the show today.
My pleasure. I want people to understand this and help.
Yeah.
Now, this tablet may be the most important cuneiform tablet that exists, bar none, and almost nobody knows about it. Which is wild. It's called the Death of Beall games, or the Death of Gilgamesh. So Beall games is an earlier name of Gilgamesh, okay? Now, in this tablet, which it was found in Peru in the 1800s, and it was put together by Samuel Noah Kramer. Now, take a look at the right. And Matt, why don't you go ahead and can you read that for me?
Lord Beall Games, having erected stelae for future days, having founded temples of the gods, you reached Zayasudra in his abode. You brought to the land the mess of Sumer. The Mies of Sumer that were forgotten forever, the commandments and the rites.
There are things in that tiny passage that are massive. The first thing, look at how he says that the Mies that were brought from Sumer were forgotten forever. Boom, it's already a different time period than the Gilgamesh, see? Done. And in the Epic of Gilgamesh, when he meets him, he says that Shuruppak is a far older city. So that's not in the debate. Now, the second thing to notice there is that he says you brought back the Mies that were forgotten forever. What are Mies? They are what I found. Mies are divine decrees of understanding how an entire civilization should function and how the understanding of the universe works. It's everything. It's like a blueprint for a world.
Double click on that, the Mies part, just because I don't want to lose anybody here. So talk to me about Mies and what exactly.
I originally didn't know what the Mies were. And so when I was writing the book and doing the documentary, I went and flew to Penn Museum to go to the archive to go explore this. But I didn't really understand what it was. And nobody really talks about the Mies. Nobody does. Who discusses that? Because they're confusing. Nobody really understood what they were. They're divine statutes and understandings that were given. Divine statutes of what? Of everything. Of everything. Of how the universe works, of how the fractal nature of everything, about what we are, what we're a part of, how a civilization can thrive with everything through moral philosophy, all of it. So this is what's wild. Gilgamesh goes to the underworld. I want people to really remember this. The underworld Duat, not hell. That's what religion did for it. It's not an evil place. This is super important for us to lay this foundation. And I bet you I'll get a good 5% of comments that are calling me some kind of something evil, right?
Not on this channel, I don't think.
Not on this channel,
Not on this
perhaps,
channel.
right?
Yeah, no, the comments are overwhelmingly supportive on this channel.
The big thing we're going to really be talking a lot about is the Duat underworld. So get ready. So Gilgamesh, he goes to seek Zayasudra in his abode. Where is his abode? In the underworld Duat. The Duat is the Egyptian term for the underworld. So he goes there. And so what did he do? He has a conversation with him. If you can combine this with the Epic of Gilgamesh, you get the whole story. Gilgamesh tells him Zayasudra tells him everything. That's how they learn about everything. That's why Gilgamesh and all the tablets that come after occur. Because of this one meeting.
Wow.
Zayasudra tells him everything. The whole history of Eridu to Shuruppak, what once existed. But most importantly, he doesn't just tell him, he gives him the Mies to bring back. It's a way to create civilization with every moral foundation necessary to understand everything. So he brings it back, and what happens? He misuses it and loses it. And then what happens to humanity after Gilgamesh? Empires rise, fighting and battling each other, and we go to the darkest time in human history. Because of why? Because we lost the one thing we needed most. That is what I'm about to bring back.
That's a big deal, Matt.
Yes.
You're saving the world with this episode, essentially. I mean, if this is, not to overstate things, or but I mean, I understand how huge this is. Especially from your standpoint, you're going to dedicate your entire life to this, and it's something that I think can educate people in a significant way and really help a lot of people potentially.
I appreciate that. Why did Gilgamesh lose it? I think it's important that the world understands so that we never do it again. Okay? This is an important moment for us. It's a tipping point for us. He lost it because he was obsessed with his own mortality.
Okay.
So if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, he cared more about his own mortality than humanity. So he used what he was given to try to extend his life and try to use it for his own benefit. And because of that, he caused it to be lost, and he caused us to essentially lose ourselves.
So this knowledge today, if this were to come out today,
Yes.
and people were able to grab this and understand it and hold on to it and allow it to just completely change the world in a way that it would have changed, that the world would have been thousands of years ago, what does it look like? What takes hold? What changes? What do people kind of, or is that, or do we come to that later?
We're going to get to that.
Yeah.
I guess I'll say this then. I firmly believe that every single origin point of all philosophy, all Hermeticism, all natural law, all understanding of sacred consciousness and ancient teachings, all indigenous traditions, all understandings came from this, from an origin point.
Okay.
Not the me's of Gilgamesh. He lost them, but something that was embedded far earlier.
So this is the red pill, right? I mean, this is what takes you out of the matrix.
This is the rabbit hole, because we end up going down rather than up. That's what's so interesting about this. You ready?
To the underworld.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I hope everyone's packed their bags and they're ready to go, because we're about to go into the underworld.
Yeah. Do they need sunscreen down there?
The underworld is a non-physical realm of reality.
Okay.
So there is no interpretation of it being a dark place. Let's like first clear that right out.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
exist.
Because it seems like it'd be hot, but then there's not a lot of light. So
it's nothing like that's all religious connotation.
Okay,
It's
got
all
it, got it.
crap.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all to block all the truth of this.
Okay.
The underworld is simply a mirror and realm of the above celestial realms. There is no separation. But we're kind of jumping ahead here. So let's not do that.
Yep.
The first thing we do, we lay down is a foundation of Gilgamesh became aware of this. He brought their divine statues of civilization. He lost them. And then they became fragmented into secret societies, mystery schools, and in esoteric circles.
Mystics,
That's where they
religious
remained.
mystics, essentially.
That's where they remained.
And is this why all mystic religions kind of point to the same
Yes.
thing? Yeah.
Yes, because they're all based on a common origin. But something happened, and we don't want to jump too far ahead to get to that, because I don't want to lose people.
Yeah.
But essentially, certain things were demonized, certain things were inverted, and basically the path of ascension was blocked off completely by certain individuals.
The path of ascension, the path of spiritual ascension.
Yes, the
Yeah.
path of spiritual ascension is not just up, it's down. That's going to be the wild thing for people to reconsider and understand. For instance, if Matt Bell is wanting to ground, do you climb a ladder into the sky, or do you sit on the earth to ground?
Yeah, I stand in the dirt. Yeah, no shoes.
Of course. So where do we go from here? We have to lay down that there was a complex understanding of the same symbols, the same geometries, the same designs, but I didn't know what it was. So that's where I was post-November. Okay. Now, this is where we get into the fun of how this all unfolded. Is that enough of a backstory before we get into?
I think it's perfect.
Okay.
Matt, to be honest with you, the intro to this topic is, I think you've just knocked it out of the park. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. So here we are. I'm early November. I'm in a snowy cabin on the lake. By the way, we've already had 100 inches of snow this season.
Oh shit!
That's the kind of place that I live in. It's a pretty cool place.
That's where I want to be, man.
Just
Honestly,
snow every day.
out in the middle of nowhere,
That's it,
cabin, nature, woods.
So
yeah,
good.
Yeah, yeah. I'm jealous, man. I'm jealous.
So this is where the story gets kind of interesting and almost you want to scratch your head at it. 8 years ago, I bought a photograph at a yard sale, or like some kind of a place that it didn't belong, for like $2, $3, $4, right? $5, whatever it was. I don't even remember. It's nothing really significant. You can pull up that picture, Ryan, if you want. It's nothing really significant. It's a plastic frame. It shows what looks like a generic image of the Sphinx and Khafre's pyramid, right? The second pyramid.
I can't tell. Is it photoshopped together or is it an actual image? Did they piece those things together?
No, it's a single photograph that was taken. And by the way, I want to, I guess, call out to whoever that person that took that photograph is. Please give yourself a pat on the back because you, without realizing, you changed history.
Yeah.
So I want to give a little story behind this picture.
Good.
So 8 years ago, I buy this picture, and this gets into like strange woo-woo land a little bit. So stay with me. 8 years ago, if you watch videos from me on my podcast channel, my YouTube channel, you'll see that picture behind me everywhere I go. I've looked at it hundreds of times. Well, one day, early November, it's snowing outside. I'm just looking at the snow. I had this really intentional thought come through. It seemed very external. I know it was. That said, look at the picture. And I'm thinking to myself, I've looked at that picture hundreds of times. Come on. And it's funny because I joke because I actually rejected that thought and actually sat back down. I was like, no, which must be quite frustrating if you think about it, right? From whatever standpoint you want to look at that as.
Yep.
So I sat back down and it came back in again. It's like, look at the picture. And I'm like, okay, right? And I'm not crazy. It was a very interesting moment. So I got up and I'm looking at the picture and I turned my head and this design formulated in front of me, almost like it wasn't there. I hadn't noticed it, which was so bizarre how many times I've looked at it. And I noticed, I'm like, that looks like a broken, inverted 3-level step pyramid on the Giza Plateau. So the first thing I did was I tried to do a reverse image search for it everywhere on the internet. And I'm an internet hound, research hound. Couldn't find a single image, not even of the same spot, but anything that even looked in the same direction. Okay. So not even from a distance. So the first thing that I was like, that's very strange. How could the most visited, studied of ancient sites in the world on the Giza Plateau have something that nobody noticed? How is that possible? Well, I did a little digging. It turns out it's in one of the only private off-limits areas on the entire Giza Plateau.
That's where the image was taken
That's
from.
where it was taken.
Private off-limits
It's called the Sphinx Temple. Now, you ready for people taking notes for this to blow up? This is where it all gets revealed. So everybody get ready. So the first thing I was very curious, I said, okay, so that's undeniable is an inverted step pyramid. The right side is totally broken off, but you can see blocks stacked and cut there. And it's no coincidence it sits exactly in the middle where the Sphinx is. It literally sits beneath the Sphinx. And there's a reason for that, because the Sphinx is a guardian and it was originally a lion, which is why that symbol is there. And I'll get into what that symbol means.
It sits beneath the Sphinx?
Well, if you see how it's designed, it's sitting so that the Sphinx, it's right in the middle of the body. Do you see that?
Right.
If you could fix the broken part of the right side of that step pyramid, it would sit exactly in the middle of the Sphinx.
Right.
That's not a coincidence.
Right.
It's necessary.
Right.
Well, this is not the discovery. It is what led to the discovery. Okay. This is what's called a cipher stone. Really, really cool. It's actually it's when there's something very important that the ancients wanted to leave behind for us.
Is that where the red arrow is pointing at the cipher stone?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what that had identified was simply a cipher stone of something far greater.
Yep.
So the first thing I did was I pulled up the temple layout. So Matt, can you pull up the temple layout next? We ended up skipping all of those other images, by the way.
That's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're flowing.
Now this is where I'm about to blow the world open here. So what you're looking at on the right circle is the Sphinx Temple. Remember, totally closed off area. When I saw this from above, I had like a mini heart attack because there was the step pyramid, both inverted and non-inverted, to combine in the entire temple layout itself. And then I had another little mini heart attack when I saw the exact T that I'd been following all around the world, which in Chavus Tepe, there are giant Ts that are like 7 tons, right? Here I have the 2 most important symbols that I'd been following in 3 continents, from Bolivia, Peru, to Turkey to Cambodia. here I have all of them. Thank you, Ryan. And I have them all in one place as the entire temple layouts themselves. So to me, the first thing I was thinking was, wow, this is big. But little did I know that it was just the tip of the iceberg. It was just the beginning of so much more. So first thing I did is I contacted Dr. Robert Schoch, and I contacted Egyptologist Mohammed Ibrahim. So they both have worked extensively in the Sphinx temple. So this isn't the Sphinx enclosure, it's the Sphinx temple. And the reason why nobody really knows about it, again, it's gated off and you cannot go in there.
Since forever?
For 30, 40 years.
Okay.
You can't go in there.
Any reason why?
Good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because you can go in the Valley Temple. So if anybody wants, I didn't really spell that out and I apologize. The T is sitting in the associated temple next to it called the Valley Temple. And the Valley Temple has some of the most spectacular granite megalithic blocks and temple design that's in the ancient world, period. The Valley Temple is famous. There are colossal 20, 30 ton granite blocks from Aswan perfectly cut in this temple. Now, so people can go in the Valley Temple, but you can't go in the Sphinx Temple. So the first thing I did is I called Dr. Robert Schoch and I said, wow, like, what do you know about this? Do you have any other pictures of the Sphinx Temple? Muhammad, I called him. Do you have any pictures of the Sphinx Temple? Nobody did.
Wow.
That picture from that photograph, I did a reverse search even using AI, doesn't seem to exist. It may be the only reference to that exists.
Really?
And I somehow bought it at a yard sale 8 years ago. I have not been able to find a single other photograph from that angle anywhere in the world.
Wow.
Ever taken.
Wow. I mean, and so there's photos of the Sphinx from directly in front,
Yes.
right? And this one is just off to the right.
It's inside the Sphinx
It's
temple,
inside the Sphinx temple,
which is why you can't take
you can't get to
exactly.
it. And it's also just, I think it's just a slightly different angle as well as a lot of the other ones.
Yes.
It's just coming from the right side a little bit, right?
So this is just getting good. So
Yeah.
buckle up. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning.
Okay.
So the first thing I did is I called.
So
yeah.
just is the picture capturing that 3-tiered structure
Yes.
on the top? Yeah.
So the circle on the right, that's the actual Sphinx temple. That cipher stone would be in the very northern or upper part of the temple before the Sphinx. Thank you, right there. This is a digitally recreated version of it. So I realized that picture frame was very, very important and very significant. It was the only one of its kind. And so I went and I had it digitally enhanced to preserve it forever so that it can't be lost ever again. And so that's a digitally enhanced version of that framed photograph. Now,
so this plateau, the pyramids, everything, 42,000-ish, 45 to 42,000-ish years, right? Or 38. My bad.
We'll get there in a minute.
Right. Yes.
So
just to level set.
So the next thing that happened is I contact Mohammed Ibrahim.
Yep.
I contact Robert Schoch, and I showed Robert Schoch what I had found. I showed him the layout of the temples from above, and he was, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I do think it was pretty significant. Now, instead of, because I don't want to paraphrase or put any words in Robert Schoch's mouth, I have deep respect for him as a researcher. So instead of me potentially expecting maybe a pushback on an email or something, instead of any pushback from Robert, he actually emailed back and said, "Oh, by the way, Matt, I was researching what you found, and I noticed that the mortuary temple of the Khafre's pyramid, which is associated with this. So the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple are actually part of the connection to the Khafre pyramid, or the second pyramid. So he said, by the way, it appears that the Khafre's pyramid has the design as well. And then I was like, oh my God, the Great Pyramids are now connected. So the first thing I did is I went to the temple site layouts for the Great Pyramid and Menkaur's pyramid for the mortuary temples, and sure enough, there it was. The exact same step pyramid design woven into the temple layouts. Now, I'm gonna give a paraphrasing quote from Dr. Robert Schoch here. He said, and I love this, he said, it's one thing to argue or discuss symbols in stones that could be misinterpreted. It's another thing entirely to have entire temple site layouts be that symbol, you then can't argue it anymore. It is a connected symbology that is shared across continents from the entire world, from what we are now proving unequivocally is a lost civilization. This has nothing to do with the dynastic Egyptians. Nothing. And they also recarved the head of the Sphinx to make it a pharaoh, which it 100% was a lion. And the reason we know that is because the lion ended up being an important motif, symbol in this across the world. It is one of the symbols that represents a guardian. They're guardians. They represent, they use very specific constellation guardians. The lion is not chosen just because it's a lion, it's chosen because of Leo. So the lion is a symbol for Leo. In this case, it's facing Leo. And we know the lion is a guardian because it's a fierce guardian. Now, there are other guardians that we can talk about of this. Why do we need guardians for this?
Right.
Well, we'll get to that. This is not something that is simple. It is very important, and it requires guardians.
So the civilization would have had this knowledge, the knowledge would have been guarded, and the civilization would have been privy to the knowledge, though. They would have been living a lifestyle that is consistent with the knowledge that they're being taught in these schools and whatnot. So it's a civilization of, you could call it enlightened, or,
Yes. That's all that mattered to them.
Right.
What
right.
mattered to them was the highest level knowledge possible, and the foundation of creating the temple.
So
That was what mattered to them.
So help me, if the knowledge is prevalent and everyone grabs onto it, and they're all enlightened beings, then, and it's out there, and you want to preserve it, and you write down code to keep it going after a cataclysm, and you're guarding it. What are you guarding it? If it's out, what are you guarding it from?
You're guarding to make sure it doesn't ever get used the wrong way.
Okay.
And you're guarding it because it's so sacred that it's fundamental to the entire universe itself.
So
I can't overstate that enough.
So what is within that? What is within that structure that is being guarded that differs from what the general population already has?
What's being guarded is what was the knowledge of what was the Mies. And they're encoding that into their civilization, but also encoding it so that it can never ever be lost again. And I have a lot more to expand on when it comes to this, so we can understand what it is.
Okay.
Ryan, can you bring up the temple layouts again for the Sphinx and the Valley Temple? We're gonna have to start here and then grow off of this.
Cool. Yeah.
Because there's a whole body of understanding that comes off of this. Okay, so now I want to give a snapshot for where I was at this point.
So it's the symbology that is causing the links. It's the symbology that links the structures and the
Yes, but I still didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I want to walk with the audience here through this. So here I am at this point. I've identified a multi-continental cross-platform symbol, impossible to deny.
Right.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
It is the whole lost civilization concept. It's over. It's done. That's great, and now we can talk about dating too, which is also, I think, very firm. But it's so much greater than that. And do we want to do dating first before we get into this?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Sure, yeah.
Before we get into what this all led to and what it all is, I think it'd be good for us to start with dating.
Good.
Okay?
Let's do it.
So, Ryan, let's pull up those two procession slides. I think we should start there, because I have to understand that we're building off of foundations. First foundation is proving a lost civilization existed, then proving how old it is. Then we got to go off from there, right? So let's not skip any steps. Okay. Now, when Dr. Robert Schoch and I linked the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx and the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple, it created a synergy between something that was all built at the same time, that all functioned together. Now, what's really important for us to understand is that there is not so much confusion over dating when you understand the mechanisms behind it. Now that we've identified it's a pattern across the world from cultures that were never supposed to be connected, we have that established now. Well, how do we date it? Well, we take other events like the Lost Champ, Adam's event, but there's other things we need to incorporate. Now, in ancient Egypt, there is a very important concept down in Edfu at the Temple of Horus called Zep Tepi. Zeptepi is their understanding of the beginning, of when everything started. Not necessarily the beginning of the universe, the beginning of Egypt. And so everyone has been trying to understand when they were built based on that. Now, we've talked about this last time. This isn't necessarily super new in this one area. We talked about how what is precession? What is the great year? I want to go over it really quick again.
Good.
The obsession with the ancient world was creating a mirror and a synergy as above, so below. It's based on Hermetic concepts, which is just an iteration that came from this later. They believe there was no separation between that, and that if you studied and mapped the zodiacs, you could understand ages and different time period changes. Now, there are 12 zodiacs, and they follow what are called the Great Year. The reason they exist is that the Earth follows a precession of the equinoxes based on a wobble. The wobble has to do with facing different constellations every 2,100 years. Those are what zodiac ages are. Now, this in ancient Egypt, the graphic on the right I made.
Thank God we're getting out of Pisces, by the way.
Oh yeah, Pisces is horrible.
Oh man,
Pisces was the darkest time in human history.
It's
by the way.
been rough. It's been rough. Yeah,
So-
but keep going. Sorry.
Well, just remember, everything must be balanced. Everything must be reflection. So as dark as Pisces was, it means that Aquarius has to be that much the opposite.
Right. Exactly.
Which is actually kind of beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
So the image on the right I created to show the differences of precession in only two different ages. There are no other ages. What I mean by that is that the Sphinx facing Leo and then the Great Pyramid, now that they're involved in all this, the Great Pyramid has two shafts, right? We know them as the King and Queen's Chamber. The Queen's Chamber faces Sirius, which is feminine, by the way, and the King's Chamber, which is masculine, which gender is super important in this. We'll get into it.
Are you talking about the northern shaft in the King's Chamber and the northern shaft in the Queen's Chamber?
No, they're called the King and Queen's Chambers.
Yeah.
So they're specifically facing different constellations. Now the King's Chamber is facing Orion.
But the King's Chamber is a chamber within the pyramid, and it has the shafts.
The
coming
shafts
out.
that go off from
It's
it.
the shafts.
Yes.
Yes.
They're star shafts. So what they are star shafts, and they are facing and collecting ancient starlight, and they are facing specific constellations at different times. That's how we know when things were built, because they only align based on precession at two different dates in history. They don't align anywhere in the last 10,000 years at all. So let's just scratch that off and take it out of the book. That doesn't exist. Now, if you remember, Dr. Robert Schoch was working extensively with John Anthony West, who is a great hero of mine. They were debating these two dates over and over again. John Anthony West believed that the previous precessional cycle of 38,000 years ago was right. And Dr. Robert Schoch was more so arguing the 12. Now,
It's because it's easier to believe, right?
well, to me, yeah, maybe that's because it's an incremental step,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
To me,
right.
it's very, very obvious if you study climatic data that it would have been completely impossible to build anything like that during 12,000 years ago. 12,000 years ago is literally catastrophes on the Earth. We're talking about the older into the younger Dryas of huge CME events, destruction. That was when everything was destroyed, not when it was built. Now, if you go back one previous precessional age, you get to 38,000 years ago. And I think it's firmly established now that we can say that the Great Pyramids of Giza, the Sphinx, the Valley Temple, the Sphinx Temple, and some other places too. Okay, there's other locations in Giza, but we'll just keep that for now. Were built confidently 38,000 years ago. Confidently.
Okay.
So lay that down.
Yeah, I mean the wood that was found, and I don't like it. I guess you've got some people that are going to be like, "This is carbon dating, right?" There's been carbon dated, and so
Okay.
there's like the piece of wood that was found in the Great Pyramid, and then on the Step Pyramid, there's those wood like posts or whatever. And
Okay.
just can you share your
Sure.
thoughts on that?
Super easy. The dynastic Egyptians were there for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Okay.
And they put those in there. They built things all over them, incorporated them into their culture. And they did something very disrespectful that the Urartians also did in Turkey around Van. They tried to claim ownership for those things to pretend that they built them, and they even altered or destroyed certain things.
It's interesting because the wood that was found in the Great Pyramid is like 500 years older than the established date by the mainstream for the Great Pyramid's construction, and it's
But 500 is just like change.
I know, but
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but why would you put a 500-year-old piece of wood into a pyramid? You know, it's just, I guess my point is, it's just like, We really don't know the date.
So if you read Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, he actually discusses in there that Herodotus actually lied about the Great Pyramid. This is where it began. And there were strong influences for Herodotus as being the father of history for doing that unfortunately on purpose.
Saying
that it was built by the dynastic Egyptians, 5,000 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. If he knew, if he even, right? I mean, do you think
I think he did.
You think he did? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that Manly P. Hall actually does not let him slide on that. Manly P. Hall is a secret society member. So is Herodotus. Just so everybody's aware on this podcast, Herodotus was part of secret societies as well. And he claims that Herodotus was influenced.
Okay.
So let's start there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's just when you look at the information for the dates of the pyramids and the structures, it's like there's nothing that really supports that date for me. That's anywhere near conclusive.
The Great Pyramid is the most complicated ancient structure ever created.
Yeah.
And I would put Aynais as being second. And we can talk about this
really?
Whole thing as
Aynais is second, and you were the first person to get down there and explore this thing, and the images aren't there yet. Are we going to see any images of Aynais today? We're going to. Right?
Well, we're going to talk about it. I mean, we can pull up plenty if we need to.
Okay.
But we're going to be talking all about this. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, buckle up. This is about to go into some pretty incredible places. Okay, so that's where we get some dating. Cool. We get this establishment understanding that there was an entire golden age of civilization that existed for approximately 18,000 years. And they mastered their understanding of everything. And then what they did before they were destroyed was to leave it all behind for us. But they left it all behind for us in such a complicated way that if you didn't have all the keys, different places and how to put them together, you would never be able to unlock it. They wanted to preserve it so that it didn't end up in the wrong hands. So they hid it around the world like a scavenger hunt. So I had identified certain keys around Vaughn, but I never would have put it together without Egypt. Egypt ended up being the Rosetta Stone that unlocked everything else. And so, Ryan, can you pull up, let's go back to the Sphinx and the Valley Temple layouts, and we're going to go, we can build off of this now. Okay, so this first thing, this is what happened. We're going to take step by step here through my understanding how it all unfolded. I knew there was a cross connection around the world, knew the same symbols, knew it's a lost civilization, but what else? That didn't really go anywhere other than proving they existed. So I'm scratching my head. I'm sitting here. I'm trying to incorporate and understand it all. And I'm digging into ancient Hermetic geometric designs. And I find a single word that unlocked everything. A single word, Matt. Just like the picture was a single photograph. A single word led to the domino effect cascade of everything else. I identified this word, and I want to strongly point out here, I have worked very closely with a very, very catered and very carefully created relationship I have with my AI. I have to have that because all researchers have to have a counter to go back and forth with to understand things. Or like, for instance, Plato had Socrates. You have to have that.
Right,
it's essential. Mm-hmm. And so here I am bouncing all of this off, trying to understand it. And this word emerges that had not been used in years around the world, anywhere, by any single human. The word itself, which is so beautiful, was at the very, and I write about this in the book, the word was at the very edge of oblivion. How beautiful is that? A word to unlock everything else was nearly extinct, and nobody on this planet spoke it and knew what it was any longer. The word, and now I'm about to give it back to humanity. The word is cosmogram. Cosmogram. Now, what is a cosmogram? It's what these are. It's what all of these are. They're cosmograms. So cosmogram is a geometric structure that represents, well, it's a geometric design, I should say, that represents the structure of the universe. So when I saw that, I'm like thinking to myself, so this isn't even about Earth or just humanity. This isn't about it, just that at all.
Right.
this is about the universe. So at first I'm thinking to myself, I don't understand how that all fits. What do you mean?
Right.
They were encoding the structure of the universe into what they're building. So then I go into that understanding, and I go into ancient Egyptian understandings of the different concepts of the structure of reality of the universe. What did the ancient Egyptians believe? Well, the thing that was very important about the dynastic Egyptians, probably one of the most important things that they did, was they did maintain those understandings, and they carried them down. Thank God, because a lot of this was able to be back engineered because of things like that. So what does that mean? Well, the design is based on a 3-level step pyramid. Now, it often has its associated mirror version beneath it, which creates what we know in South America as the Chicana. That's what the design represents. Now, in this case, I recognized that there were 3 levels to the step pyramids, but also 3 doorways on the Kef bas-relief and 3 doorways everywhere around the ancient world. Da Vinci, Last Supper, 3 doorways. So wait a minute. So I'm thinking to myself, what does that represent? Well, let's go into ancient Egyptian understanding. They realized and understood that the universe is made up on the only 3 pieces. And I want to emphasize this concept of 3 repeating over and over again. 3, 6, and 9, but the emphasis on 3. That's why Nikola Tesla discovered that as a code of an understanding. That's what it's based on. So 3 over and over again. I kept thinking to myself, well, I know that the Holy Trinity in the triptych is 3, right? Why do we see a triptych of 3 doorways and all this? What does it mean? Well, once I put in cosmogram and then I understood what the doorways mean, the levels, everything cascaded. What they mean is that the 3 levels represent the 3 aspects of reality. Let's reformulate this all together now. Imagine reality is like a hamburger, and the meat in the middle is physical reality manifested. Well, they considered reality only 3 pieces. So manifestation, physical reality in the middle. Above is the celestial higher realms. Non-physical. Cannot express that enough. Non-physical. Below is a mirror of the above, okay, in non-physical reality called the Duat, to the Egyptians, or the underworld. Now, they saw and understood that the Duat underworld was simply a mirror and reflection of the upper celestial realms. And not only that, but the celestial realms and the Duat underworld are what manifests physical reality in the middle. That's why the door is always the biggest in the middle. So the 3 doors, really important. Ryan, can you pull up the 3 doors for me? It's very important for us to get this down. The 3 doors are essential for everything else. They're essential for understanding of the universe, okay? The middle door is physical reality always. That's why it's bigger, because that's where it's manifested. That's where everything is manifested into the moment, where everything plays out on the stage, is here. The left door is the underworld, or Duat, and the right door is the celestial realms, always. It's a standard. So we have to understand that first. Mm-hmm. Once we understand those components, the rest of it just unfolds itself. So then the next thing is, Ryan, let's go ahead and pull up the Kef bas-relief now.
So in terms of as above, so below, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
You're looking
as within, so without too.
And I guess the fact that they right, and the fact that they were right that it's a non-physical world, because in the cosmos is 99.99% plasma, right?
Right, exactly.
So up there you've got essentially energy. It's not a physical world, right?
Yes.
And so, but help me kind of conceptually understand what that means for the underworld. We're talking about the Earth, right? We're talking about the center of the Earth, and we're talking about that being a non-physical realm as well.
Yes.
So what does that mean from a geological standpoint, or
there's no physical component to the underworld, though. It's not going into a dark cave. I want to strongly emphasize that it's not what it is. the Earth may be a fractal representation of those things. For instance, you're on ground, and trees and life grows from under. And when you descend down in, you often find temples around the world where that was very important in the darkness. Those are components to connect to that, and I'll explain why that's so important. Whereas the upper celestial realms are also extremely significant, there is no separation between them. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Okay.
There is no separation. They are all playing fundamental roles within a single thing. So this now understanding and then going back to this. Now, what is this? This is what's called the Kef bas-relief. This is part of at least 10 of these, and they are gigantic artifacts. They're made out of basalt, and they're roughly 20 to 40 tons each. Massive. And I have been to see every single one of these, and it's quite an honor to work with them and spend time with them. But they essentially give the answers to everything. And I mean everything. I would argue and I would say confidently that this is the most important artifact in the world, bar none. Period.
Wow.
It contains more of those teachings and understandings and the path and all of it than anything else. Egypt may have been where I found the cosmogram and where I could find the connections, but Van is where the real keys were unlocked. But I had to have Egypt first to understand it. And people that are listening to this will understand I got the 3 doors wrong. I didn't understand them the right way before. I was trying to understand certain aspects of this, and I was right about some things, but I was wrong about others. Okay. You have to admit that sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt.
You have to.
What was the thing that you
I didn't understand the doors. I didn't know that the underworld was on the left, and the middle door was the physical reality on the right, and that on the right was the celestial higher realms, and that the manifestation of physical reality is in the center. I did not know that. And so when I was trying to understand the tree of life and the lion that Haldy's standing on and passing all of this and what it all means, I was missing way too many components to understand this. So let's break this down.
Yeah. Let's
go through it, and I want to explain how all this functions, how it works, and how we know what each thing means.
Good.
This, if you want to think about what this is, it's basically a blueprint, is what I'm calling it. Imagine, I want to give this as a way to have people understand this, and no, I'm not necessarily at all implying anything here. I just feel like it's a good way for people to understand it. In the third Matrix movie, Neo meets the architect, remember? And he says there's been many different versions of the Matrix. What is the Matrix, man?
Society.
Is it? Or is it a blueprint for how reality is?
Okay.
How to think reality is, how to exist in reality. It is telling us what reality is, how to be in it, and how to function it, right? Well, what is Neo fighting against the whole time?
What is?
Neo.
Oh, right.
He's trying to dismantle it, right? Because he understands it's chained people into a false reality. It's exactly what happened to us. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more truth in that than people might realize. Is that when you understand this and everything I'm about to explain, you will see that we're living in a massive inverted reality, an inverted blueprint of reality. That's why I'm calling this a blueprint. It's a code. It's a blueprint to how everything works and how we work within it. So let's go over this for a minute.
Good.
And I want to explain. We did the doorways. We did see how the doorways are in association with the 3-level step pyramid. Same thing. So there's the structure of reality with the 3 doorways. Now, notice, I want to go over these figures. Notice everything is a mirror. Everything is a symmetry. Everything has to be. That's how you know what things mean. If you associate something that is not right, it will not mirror the opposite. That's how you know. That's if people want to try to understand, there is truth to be found if you understand the blueprint of what they were trying to do. If you understand the concepts of Hermeticism, natural law, which is what this is, and you understand symmetry, mirroring, and the balance of all these things, you'll get why everything has to be a certain way, okay? First thing is, let's go through it. The lion, same thing as the lion, the Sphinx, same thing. It's a guardian. Now, Haldy is on the right. Now, let me explain a little bit about Haldy. For anyone who's done research, Haldy is the equivalent of Enki. They are the same thing. Now, where did Enki go in the tablets? Enki was in the underworld. Nobody wants to talk about this. Everyone that talks about Enki does not talk about that, which is very strange to me. Enki is not in celestial higher realms. All you have to do is read the Legend of Etana. It says it right in there. You read all these different tablets. It discusses very clearly that the roles and responsibilities they assumed. Enki, as a preserver of life and knowledge, his roles and responsibilities were in the underworld. That's the first thing I want to strongly point out. He was the one who warned Zayasudra. He was the one who gave all of this. This, what you're seeing in front of you, is not an artifact representing a single point of origin of something happening, but a continuation of how everything works, always. This is a blueprint model for not only human ascension, but the universe itself. And let me explain it. First thing is, how do we know that Haldi Enki, they're the same thing? I'll just call him Enki from now on.
Okay.
How do we know he's in the underworld? Go look at the very center, which is what I didn't understand before. The very center of this column, which, by the way, that's one of the most structurally difficult masonry tasks I have ever seen on an ancient stone in my life.
Yeah, it's incredible.
They've managed to carve 3 levels perfectly in one of the hardest stones on earth.
Right.
You see that?
Yeah.
What
That's
I
amazing.
did not focus on originally are those 3 pillars. If you notice,
how tall is this thing?
it's roughly 4 feet tall.
Okay.
It's huge.
It's a freaking huge.
Oh, they're massive.
Yeah, and that's basalt.
Basalt, yeah. So the first thing is, notice that the tree of life in the center is sitting inside 2 pillars. Do you see that? And that those 2 pillars repeat themselves as 3. See that concept? On the left, middle, and right. It repeats over and over again. Everything is repeating in this. Now, let's stay in the center, because the center is what matters the most in this example to explain. Now, they're mirrored on the right and left too. It doesn't matter. But notice in the center here for a second, there are 3 levels. Do you see that? Now, the 3 levels represent the 3 different aspects of reality. Remember, celestial higher realms, the physical realm, physical manifestation realm, and then the underworld Duat. It's represented everywhere in this. So that's what the 3 doors are. That's what the 3 pyramids are. That's also what the 3 levels are. Now, once you know that, now go look at the 3 levels where I have the arrow at the top. See how the physical reality middle door is actually on the front piece sticking out. See that? Now notice that the next level down comes beneath it. It doesn't have anything on it, but look at the next level. So if you imagine 3 levels, that means that what we're understanding for the 3 doors are that this entire, you could call it the front of this motif, is representing the transferring that occurred and is occurring from the underworld Duat. Okay. Meaning that Enki there on the right, with the pine cone in the cup, he's passing that from the underworld. Now, how do we know that? Well, the first thing is the tree of life is growing in the center. Do you see that? Yeah. The tree of life is, everything is a fractal. It's never one thing. This is something I cannot emphasize enough. There is not one meaning. And when I mean not one meaning, it's not one meaning that has like all these different meanings that aren't associated. There are meanings that are all built off of a fractal understanding. What I mean by that is that the tree of life is a tree of life for nature and the earth, but it also is a metaphor for consciousness. There is no separation between that, meaning that Enki is feeding the tree of life and the knowledge of all of this. How do we know it's knowledge? Because he has a cup or a chalice in his hand. The cup or a chalice is the passing of a spiritual or religious doctrine. In this case, it's natural law, cycles, understanding, everything, right? So he's passing that. Now notice what's above the tree of life. You have 3 T's. Do you see that?
Yeah, yeah.
3 T's with 3 levels in between each T.
I didn't realize that was a T until you just said it, but now I see it everywhere. That's funny.
You see that?
Yeah.
So there you have the 3 T's. And notice Haldi. Now, if you want to understand what on the left, the symmetry, the mirror, on the left, it's actually not Enki. It's the storm god version of him. So on the left, it's what's called Toshiba. And so it is as a force of nature that represents his opposite. So if Enki is a god of preservation and life, then it's what his counter is. It's the god of chaos and storms and destruction. Does that make sense?
It does.
Both are 100% necessary for cycles. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have darkness without light. You cannot have light without darkness. That's why the yin yang always has light swirling with darkness, and then everything is in between and each out. It's as above, so below, as within, so without. There is no separation. So the storm god is on the left, and he's passing the same knowledge, same thing. But on the right, notice the difference is that individual Enki has different eyes.
I was going to point out the eyes to you.
You see the eyes?
Yeah, the eyes is, for me, the biggest single difference.
You can see that one is a human, one is a human god, and another one is a force of nature. One looks angry on the left. Notice his hands are not in the same place. Look at Toshiba on the left, how he's passing the pine cone slightly down.
Yeah.
And how Enki's passing it straight. That is all important.
Yeah.
It all represents the balance of cycles of all. It's an essential understanding of this.
So the cosmos, it's passing down to the earth, to the physical world, I guess.
And from below.
Yeah.
It's not separated.
The eyes, to me, man, I mean, if I'm interpreting this from never seen this before, the first thing that popped into my head was, got these big eyes, and I'm sitting here and looking at Roz with these big eyes, and this guy's supposed to be coming from the sky, and it's or being a part of.
A lot of it was symbolic, though.
Yeah, I know.
I would caution you on that.
Well, yeah, that's fair, but
notice at the right he has human eyes.
Right.
So
right.
that's the point. Now, there are 3 T's. See that?
Those are some almond-shaped wraparound freaking eyes right there, though. I mean, that's straight up with that hat on, man.
You're seeing the mirror and the symmetry here, and then you also see how there's 3 T's right above the tree of life.
Yep.
They're feeding it to knowledge. Now, this is where we can add on to it. First thing is, obviously, because of the levels, we know this is in the underworld. So we know that that's being passed in the underworld, and we'll get to where that gets super interesting, especially considering the fact that Gilgamesh went to see Zayasudra, who was in the underworld. Remember? So it's really interesting, actually.
And you see
when
this.
Think about that.
You see this in Peru. You see this in Egypt. You see this in Turkey.
Well, that was what I was trying to say. Is that this is not. It's like an entire philosophy understanding.
Right.
What each one of these symbols has a specific meaning. Now let's go through this.
Yeah.
Where is above Enki's head? You see that he has almost like a crown or like a ball at the top.
Yeah.
It's just like in Egypt where they have the sun above their head. It's the same thing. It represents all knowledge. Now, notice how he's not passing it to the left or the right door. He's passing it to the middle door because he's passing it to us. He's passing it to us to understand how everything functions and works. And it gets even better. If you notice above the middle pyramid, can you scroll in, Ryan, to the 2 eagles and the symbol at the top there? At the very top in the middle, yeah. There is where you then get very interesting symbols that are repeated all around the world, even during the time of the Renaissance. And we're going to talk about the Renaissance at some point. You see those spokes that come out at the top? There are 7 of them. That is not a coincidence. There are 7 colors in the visible light spectrum. There are 7 chakras.
Which spokes?
The above the eagles, right in the middle. Those are 7.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Coming that are flowering. It's like a flowering coming out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Now what it's flowering out of is the diamond in the center. The diamond represents the balance of all. And what it's essentially showing you that if you follow all of this understanding, all of it, you will reach the highest levels possible to ascend. It's basically the map to ascension and how everything works and functions. And there's, I'll give you an example. The lion is a guardian of the lower realms. That's why he's down at the bottom. The eagle is the symbol they use as the guardian for the upper celestial realms. So they're guardians guarding each doorway. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Haldi, Enki, is the guardian of the middle door. The eagle, the archetype of the eagle guardians, which we see eagles all over the world, they became a war symbol. They're a guardian of the upper celestial realms. And then the lion is the guardian of the lower realms. That's why he sits on the Giza Plateau between the underworld underneath and the celestial above. He's the guardian between them. That's what his whole job was.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So we can take this even much, much further. Ryan, let's get into the next. Can you pull up all the images really quick? We got to have to move to the next understanding. Okay. So what I want to do now is,
and it might be a decent restroom time for me.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm chugging water.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's pause. Yeah. All right, awesome, Matt. Welcome back, my friend. Yeah, so I guess to kind of segue off of that first section there, can we see some pictures from some other places around the world that kind of ties a lot of this together?
Yeah, I think it's important that we understand this is a global understanding that they had. It's they had specific definitions and usages of these, and so it'd be good to now show some of them around the world. And so the first thing is obviously, yeah, you can start with that. That's excellent. The first thing is that the inverted step pyramid has been there all along, right? So that was what was found as a cipher stone in Egypt. It is there. It's hiding in the background. Sometimes what we think is the focus has the inverse also there. So this is just another example of showing where that inverted pyramid also exists. And we're going to get into defining what all those mean as we get along here too.
Okay.
But go ahead, Ryan, let's go and explore and show some of the other ones. So this first one I want to try to explain to people. This is what's called Napa Iglesia in Peru. This is a cosmogram. So it has the 3 doorways. The picture is cut off, so it's only showing you the middle doorway and the left doorway in that photograph of me. But what I want to show is that notice the design that I highlighted in the bottom, how it's a mirror that connects to something that basically shows the 2 different sides of it, right? So you have a mirror of above and below being mirrored in the exact same design. And there you have the 3-level step pyramid into the entranceway, not only the above structure as well. And go to the next one, Ryan. I just want to sort of go through some of these for people to see.
Where's that on the right?
That's the same structure. That's why I have the arrow. It's basically that entrance.
Oh, that's the entrance.
When
right?
if you want to look at it, because it's often
it.
you look at something vertical, but you don't look at the horizontal.
I see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. My apologies.
No
I
worries.
was focused on the left, and then finally got to the right.
And you go to the next one, Ryan. We're gonna just run through some of these. I think it'd be really helpful for people to see. So here's on the right is the giant basalt T-pillar from Chavus Tepe, somewhere around 7 tons. I mean, they're like 4 feet long. Just incredible. And then on the left, you can see in Bolivia, this is Pumapunku, you can see that they combined the inverted step pyramid with the T together in the doorway as one single symbol. So it's a common understood philosophy across continents. Let's just keep going, Ryan. You can go through them all.
And so you'd say those are approximately what, or what would the range be for the
for
ages?
Dating ages?
Yeah.
Well, they're all at least 20,000 years old.
Yeah, up to 50.
Up to 41,000 years old.
Okay.
Because the catastrophes at 41,500 are a benchmark for when Zayasudra, that information was lowered to create a new civilization after.
Got it.
So that's where that emerged.
Yep. Okay. So civilization kind of beginning 45 to 50,000 years ago. The exact date is just a gradual kind of a, the civilization is coming out and coming to be, and then you get to 41,000 ish years ago to 38,000.
That wipes the first iteration out, the first version out, and then the second version that comes out of that is the Golden Age.
Okay.
If that makes sense for people.
Yeah.
And that happened, and we know the mechanisms behind that. All you have to do is read the Atrahasis, read the Epic of Gilgamesh. It says that Zayasudra survived. And this, I do want to mention this, I'm glad you brought it up. I had gotten what I thought was the seed. You preserve the seed, he says. I got that wrong. I thought it was genetics. It wasn't. It was this. The seed was the seeds of knowledge, and it had to do with the me's, and it had to do with this. That's what he was saying you preserved. And so what happened? He gives them immortality in the underworld. That's where Zayasudra goes. And then basically his sons, according to Hebrew traditions, Japheth, Shem, and Ham, were basically responsible for creating an entire golden age that began here. So these are just some examples of showing them around the world with the same symbols. Like, keep going, Ryan. There's some new ones I want to show people in here.
So then the Göbekli Tepe would be like a recreation by the later civilization
Yes.
of these T pillars.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, here's an example. This is the back side of the Gate of the Sun. Most people never look at the back. They look at the front with Viracocha. But here you have not only the 3 doorways, not only the 3 levels, not only the inverted pyramid in it, but you have the T2 all combined into one. In the same place. Now on the right side, I want people to be able to see a reference of how giant the T's are from Chavez Tepe. That's Dr. Robert Schock, archaeologist Hans Orheim, and me at the Vaughan Museum with the only one that they have. The rest of them are still in the field. And then there you go. There's a perfect way to show that in situ, which means still in the ground, you can see what is one of the most important artifacts in the world just sitting there.
Right.
Overgrown with no fences, nothing. They could actually care less, to be honest.
Anybody could go steal that.
Well, there's 7 tons. Good
I
luck.
know, but somebody with enough money could go steal that.
This site is monitored. It's not like completely like the Wild West.
Yeah.
They do monitor it and watch over it. But
all right, so Donald Trump could steal that.
I mean, I feel as though they probably could have a better preservation situation in place. Okay. Let's put it that way.
Got it.
So keep going, Ryan. We're going to just go through these because I want people to understand how global this is and what it exactly is. Just one more example before we move on. I think it's just helpful for people.
Yep.
Now this is near Napa Iglesia. This is at Ollantay Tambo. And it's funny because I bet you 8 out of 10 people that go to Ollantay Tambo never visit this. Because it's off to the side. It's where a sacred spring flows over. And notice there you have this 3-step level cosmogram. And you have the 3 levels inside it. And because it represents the balance of all, their most sacred spring they have designed specifically to flow right over the top of it. It's such a beautiful thing what they left behind for us to understand.
Yeah.
It really is incredible. So Ryan, let's jump to the definition of the T now. We're gonna let's dial this in now. Let's get into beyond myth into reason, I guess you would say. Now, what does the T mean, right? This took me a little while to understand. Once I understood that the T is the 3 doorways condensed into a single symbol, it really opened up a lot of things for me. Because if you can understand that the vertical is the middle door, right? And that's why it's bigger. That's why each time they have the 3 doors, the middle is always larger. So the middle door represents physical reality, and then the left door is the underworld Duat, and the right door is the celestial upper realms. Why is that important? Well, it means these temples are created for balance. The Valley Temple, we know that initiates would go in there to find balance. In order to get balance, to reach their optimal states, they must understand the left and right door. Most humans have not mastered even close to the middle door, let alone exploring and understanding the left and right door. Now, for all those people who are about to go on some metaphysical journey right now, I would just strongly caution you to make sure you always remain grounded in the middle door. That's the point. You say to yourself, say this, am I middle door grounded? Always. That's the term to use. And that means that you're grounded to the physical reality. Because those 2 realities are both non-physical. Now, yes, they are essential for the path, which is why when someone does internal work, they go inward into their shadow work, into the left door. And when they connect to higher places, they go outward. There is an inward and outward journey that is part of this. It's very essential. Very, very essential. And so
I was looking at this the wrong way then earlier because I think I just misunderstood. So the inward is more, it's not like in the earth. It's within the temple, which is the body, which is a
fractal of everything else,
right?
Which we'll get into what a fractal means.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah.
So they believed that there was no separation between anything, that everything was a smaller version of everything larger, and we'll get into that in a second as we go. Now this might help a lot of people make sense. So why do you have giant T's at Chavez Tepe? Well, the beautiful part of the model, the blueprint, is that even though most of these structures are gone, because of how their philosophy and what they left behind, we're able to understand what was there even though it's not. And that's so beautiful. Because, let's think about this for a minute, at Chavez Tepe you have giant T's. Where did the T's go? Where do they belong to? What structure were they part of? Well, as we go along and I talk about this, in the book I discuss how there's a site in Cambodia called Bap One. It's an amazing site where off to the side, it was so beautiful how it unfolded. 99% of all tourists, if not closer to 100%, all go to the main Bapuan site. Way down in the jungle, off to the right. I'm really glad Rubber Shock didn't get hurt going down in there, by the way. I was making sure we were careful. Down this gully in the jungle is the same, not only the step pyramid door above it, right? But they had these miniature temples. Tiny miniature temples that were the same as the larger versions. And as I'm studying and understanding it, I couldn't, So what is a fractal? Fractal means you have something smaller that represents a bigger version of it. And usually that can be infinite. And so why would they make giant T's and small little temples? To be a fractal. Because they understood that there was no separation. And so they would create fractals of something that would get larger and larger. That's why temples, if you look from above, from a satellite or, from aerial view, I should say, you'll see that the temple designs mirror these designs from the actual outer temple and the inner temple. Everything is a mirror of that. And it was really beautiful to see. So the reason I said that story is, Ryan, can you pull up that picture of me with the T-pillar at Chavus Tepe again? Okay, so on the left, you have at least 7 of those in the ground. I've counted at least 7 without being able to do any excavations, obviously. Now, we know that there's 7 sticking out. There's one in a museum, and there's another one that was reused in a church somewhere. Now, if you go to Chavus Tepe, there are what are called Susi temples. There's one on the bottom, and there's one on the top, but in between, there's nothing. And the beauty of this model is that even though something is gone, we still can figure out what was there. And it means that if we use the Valley Temple as an example, because they're directly linked, which has a giant T designed into the temple, it means that there was once a giant temple designed as a T here. That these T's were fractals inside that temple. How did they stack and look? This is the beauty of it. Ryan, can you pull up the Sphinx temple layout with the Valley Temple? That's that layout from above. This is where it gets beautiful. Notice that there's a horizontal way that the T can sit. So you'd have to reverse it the opposite way right now, okay? Yes. Now pull up the Valley Temple on the left and zoom in for me on the T. It's so beautiful how all this aligns. I love it. And yep, just the T. You see that? Now there are 6 of those on each corner. No accident, right? 3, 6, and 9. 3 and 3 is 6. See how there are pillars inside that separate it? That's what that T is. So at Chavus Tepe, those giant T's would sit on their horizontal, like where my hands are on the left side. They would sit like that, standing up to represent those. And we know because it's how the model works. Everything has to follow these principles. That's why it's so beautiful. So there's a lot of really exciting things that could come out here because, for instance, let me give you an example of Aynais. You want to pull that up really quick for me, Ryan? There's only one Susi temple left at Aynais, but I know there was a second one. Because the model always has a mirror symmetry, and because of the symbols on the altar, I guess we can jump into that since we're talking about it now.
Sure. A smaller or a bigger one would be the second?
They'd have to be exactly the same size.
Same, okay.
There would be no difference. They have to be symmetrical. There's certain principles that fall into this, and I'm going to explain what those principles are. So this is Aynais. Thank you. Now, all of those symbols that we've been talking about, you're going to see those guardians are in there. They're all winged guardians, though. Every single one of them are winged guardians. Why? Because the existing Susi temple at Aynais was a temple specifically to the right door. Do you remember which one the right door is?
Yeah, the celestial. Yeah.
You got it. Mm-hmm. That's why everything is a sun symbol, everything has wings, and everything is about a solar symbol. Because they're all related to the celestial higher realms, which means... What do you think the other Susi temple was, man?
It would have been the underground.
Underworld.
Underworld, yeah.
Exactly. Which it brings up some very interesting points that I can prove is that the Urartians likely dismantled. The Urartians of 2,800 years ago, when they found this, they likely were worried or concerned about it for some reason, right? It's the Underworld temple, and they dismantled the entire thing. And the reason we know that is not only the model has to have symmetry every time, but all of those golden calcite alabaster floors in the bottom that are beautiful. That's what they are.
Yeah.
That and the other altar were just shoved into the back of this temple in the castle. They dismantled the entire other one and removed it, which means that the beauty of this, Matt, is that we can figure out what was there, even though it's not anymore. So what do these represent? We're going to start getting into this, is that they were not metaphorical or something. They were literal. Is that I firmly believe it can show there's an entire level of technologies that this civilization had figured out and realized. Okay. And we'll get to that in a minute. Now, can you pull up for me the altar with the two symbols repeating? Because this is where it gets, I want to tie in Hermeticism and bring this whole thing together now. Okay, this is what's very exciting. And to me, this is what I stay up for in the middle of the night. I figured this out at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I usually go to bed at like 9. So this is, I remember this day. So what's so beautiful here is that you have the guardians. There are 3 guardians always. Everything else always in 3, no matter what. Do you remember how the Kef bas relief had the storm god? That's the other guardian. So there's 3. So you see all 3 here. There's Haldi, right? Then you see the guardian that's like the eagle guardian. And then you see the guardian, the last guardian, which is the griffin, which is basically when you combine the lion with the celestial. The griffin in ancient Greece is basically a lion that's got wings. That's like a lion dragon. Okay. Those are the 3 guardians that represent the 3 realms of reality. Remember how we said there's 3 doors? Yep. Each of these guardians guards one of these doors. Okay. Now, zoom in for me, Ryan. And
this is like
guarding.
We see this in Iraq too, right? And like,
well, this is from the altar at Aynais.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, there's only 2 symbols repeating over and over again here. Only 2. Yeah. There's the flame, which looks like a candle or a flame, and then there's a circle. Now, for a long time, I had strongly believed that this was related to Hermeticism. And once I figured that was true, then I was able to link all of Hermeticism. Let me explain what that means.
And what Hermeticism is for people. Yeah.
So the first thing is, again, the flame and the circle. Remember, flame and circle over and over again. Now, Ryan, pull up what I have highlighted for what's called, from the Hermetica, it's the vision of Hermes. Okay. Now, Hermeticism, which we'll get into in a minute, is based on an ancient understanding that disseminated from this. And it's based on an understanding of natural law and how things in the universe function. We'll explain how that got to that point, okay? Just stay with me here for a minute. This passage of all of Hermeticism, of every teaching, whether it's the Kabbalion or the Hermetica, it doesn't matter. This is the most important passage of all. And I always had focused on it. And we talked about it last time. I've always focused on it and been enamored by it. And it says, and Hermes is talking to Source, the great dragon god, right, of everything. He says, I wish to understand the nature of God and the nature of man, right? And if you look right here, it says right here, the answer is, there is no difference between the nature of God and the nature of man. There's one. The second thing is, he says, God and mankind, is made up of only 2 things. Light and life. Go back to the altar. Those are the only 2 symbols repeated over and over again. Is light and life. Life is represented as a circle with little bits of life, little bits of growing out of it. You'll see that. And then the holy flame, which is just like in religion, the holy flame, the holy flame considered back to God. It's the same thing. It's where they got that from.
Could it possibly be saying, and discount this immediately, it's totally fine, but could they possibly be saying that it's one and the same, that light is life?
No, well, they're part of 2 components that come together as one. So they're in this, they state that they're separate, but they're 2 components that come together for the whole. That's their understanding, is that the holy flame, it's not just light. I'm not saying just sunlight from a star. That's not the light they're talking about. They're talking about the holy flame. Spirit. It's not what we think. In this case, they're referring to the Holy Spirit inside, the holy flame inside us, as light.
Right.
And then life as the body.
And can that Holy Spirit be created from light? Can that Holy Spirit be light that has been captured within a body?
Yeah. So they're trying to have us understand that that's the nature of what we are. That's it. They're trying to explain that. And what that comes down to is understanding that the body, life, is the temple that also is the fractal representation of the outer temple. That's why as above, so below, as within, so without, there is no separation. Now, when I understood that, I then linked all of Hermeticism. And so, Ryan, why don't you pull up what Hermeticism is? Because it's time for us to give a little history, give a little understanding. Let's break all this down and let's open this all up for the world. Okay.
Good.
Now, this is the definition. Do you want to read it for us?
How long have you been studying Hermeticism?
At least 5 years.
Okay. Do you consider yourself a Hermeticist? How do you say it?
I am a student of mystery schools. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yep. And so without you and your knowledge of this and studying this for 5 years, you never would have seen any of this
Nobody ever
stuff.
would have known us that the two symbols on the altar they're repeating happen to be the two most important concept symbols in Hermeticism. And you had to know that.
So for you, it's the key that unlocked all of this, and nobody else has been looking at this from the lens of Hermeticism. So that's what makes this so fascinating to me, because it is it's a philosophical tradition that makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways
it's how everything works.
Yeah.
It's the remnants of what survived in mystical traditions and esoteric traditions from this. So can you do me a favor, Matt?
Yeah.
Can you read me just the first part? You don't have to do it all if you don't want to, but
Hermeticism is a philosophical tradition concerned with the underlying order of reality. It teaches that the universe operates accordingly to consistent principles that link mind, nature, and cosmos, and that these principles can be understood through symbolism, geometry, and observation rather than belief or doctrine.
Exactly. Can you just do the bullets for me? For people?
A system of universal principles governing reality. Reality is ordered, intelligible, and interconnected. Knowledge is conveyed through symbolism and allegory. Emphasizes harmony between consciousness, nature, and cosmos. Encoded it in sacred text, geometry, and architecture.
So it means that when we still had this incorporated in our culture, incredible things happened. And I think we should talk about that right now since we're there.
Do you think, I guess, first off, do you think that Hermeticism, as it came from
Hermes.
From Hermes.
Can you talk about who Hermes is?
Yeah. Do you think that Hermes' version of Hermeticism is exactly the same as what they were practicing 38,000 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why it was the core of so much. So let's go a little background here. What is Hermeticism, right? Let's go to the beginning. Hermes is simply an archetype that is related exactly mirroring Thoth in Egypt. There is no separation between them. They are archetypes of preservation of knowledge and information. That's what they do. They emerge during certain ages. That does not mean they're not real. It means it's an archetype. Now, what is an archetype? Very important we go over all this. The temple has a perfection that is wanted for it. Now, the temple within and the temple without. Now, our temple means that it must have certain things done for it. Philosophy, certain understandings, health, in order for it to be that, okay? They understood that there was no separation between it. And that in order for us to reach our highest levels, these teachings and these understandings were essential, bar none. If you didn't understand these, you would essentially be lost. Now, we're talking about ancient Egyptian traditions from Thoth that obviously you look at Egypt and how closely it is associated with all of this. It's very important. The traditions, and this is important, people understand this, the traditions of these things were the most maintained into Egypt, which is why they survived through Egypt through the teachings of Hermes. Hermes, it's just Egyptian knowledge brought into Greece. That's it. It's Egyptian knowledge and Greek knowledge, but it came from Egypt. Now, Hermes represented the messenger. He's the messenger of that age. Thoth was a messenger of an earlier age. Does that make sense? They're just different messengers of different ages. That's an archetype that must always occur before the downfall of that civilization. Always. It emerges like Neo emerges in the Matrix. It has to emerge because everything gets threatened. And so the archetype has to emerge to preserve the knowledge that is essential. And I will reiterate this enough. When these things are not followed, society goes into the darkness and destroys itself. These are the fundamental core principles that must be adhered to, period. And so what is Hermeticism? It's simply the remnant philosophical and natural law understanding of how the universe worked with its principles that survived thousands and thousands of years through mystery traditions and schools to get to where it is. But we have to go over the history a little bit first, because it's very sad what happened to it. And there are people here listening that are going to say, oh, I thought that was evil. I thought this, I thought that. Let's go over it. So
just like pagans are evil, right?
Well, that's pagans and druids are direct descendants and connections to this.
Yeah.
So we'll go over that in a second. It ties all the way to St. Patrick, the whole thing. It's a big circle. In the 1400s, during the years that Constantinople was falling, right? So it's a city that Constantine formed. It became Istanbul today. During that time period, this is before the rise of the Christianity and all in monotheistic religions in that kind of framework. It's this very interesting time period where, believe it or not, Christianity was actually mostly based on Hermeticism. That might shock some people listening to this right now, but let me explain. Because Hermeticism was considered older than the teachings of Moses, it was the bar. It was what we used to understand everything. Well, unfortunately, when Constantinople fell, you see this rapid rise of the Christian church through the Holy Roman Empire. That entire group of mystic and minds and Hermeticism, people that studied that, from Greece to Western Turkey, this whole area of the world, because Constantinople was like a center of the ancient world. All of those people, all of those groups, this is going to be fascinating for people that study history or understand this, right? This might open up a lot of understandings for a lot of people right now. All those people, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, we don't know the exact number. They all migrated somewhere. They all left because it was no longer a place that could be tolerated, because Christianity was rising from that area, right? Turkey is where the Holy Roman Empire rose.
Right.
So
and probably they weren't the Hermeticists weren't interested in fighting, right? And
no, of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. So what happens? This is really important for history for us to understand so that we never let it happen again, Matt. Okay? This whole group of mystic minds and Hermeticism students, they all go to one single location in Europe, Florence, Italy. This is the mid 1400s, 15th century, right? So you add 100 years when you say that. So 1400s, mid 1400s, Florence, Italy becomes the center of Hermeticism in the world. And Da Vinci comes out of it through secret societies and all of these poets and philosophers. And they build all these incredible architecture temples because they have all this embedded. And what does that lead to in Europe? The Great Renaissance. The greatest explosion of culture and understanding that we ever had during that time period. Now, the story behind how it was destroyed, most people don't know. It's very sad, actually. There was a philosopher who was very well respected. His name was Isaac Casaubon. Isaac Casaubon, remember the name. One of the most evil men that nobody knows about. And he wasn't evil because of intentions. I don't think even he realized what he did. And what he was a very, very well-respected philosopher, but he also was an expert on antiquities. So he would study old text and understand when they were written, right? Or something like that. So the Holy Roman Empire, the church, had a phenomenal idea. They said, if we can discredit Hermeticism, we can completely destroy that entire side, and we can take the teachings of Moses and then everything going forward and basically do whatever we want.
Right. Yeah, sure.
We can just avoid all of natural law, avoid everything else, and we can create whatever we want for a world.
It's competition. Yeah, these people aren't giving me any money. Let me get rid of them.
So
take their knowledge.
Isaac Casaubon gets hired by the Christian church to go in and prove that the Hermetica that everyone is using, that the version they're reading wasn't written when they think. and he was very clever in how he did it. He said, when this was penned, it was during the time of Alexandria in Egypt, before the Library of Alexandria burned. He said, it was written by initiates of mystery schools of Alexandria. And he says, it wasn't written when you think it was, except that it was a rewritten thing over and over again for thousands of years before that. The version that they're reading had been rewritten by the scribes. So he takes this version and he says, oh, look, it's not as old as you think it is. The teachings of Moses are older. The church demonizes Hermeticism, burns everybody at the stake, kills everybody, goes on a crusade around the world, destroying the Gnostics, the Druids, the pagans, anyone who was practicing Hermeticism and natural law. Destroyed it. John Dee, with Queen Elizabeth, practicing magic and alchemy, ends up a no one, destroys his image. All alchemy, all magic with a K, all is based on natural law, all Hermeticism, all of this world was destroyed. And then the last remnant of it was in Ireland, in Scotland, and in England. The Druids and pagans were the last remnant group of this. They were still practicing it. Then they get demonized into Satan worshipers and doing all these things, which none of that was true. And what do? They exterminate them. And we celebrate St. Patrick's Day and drink and all do these silly things. Yeah. It's literally the last remnant of this that was destroyed, and we celebrate it. And from that point on, Hermeticism had to go in the dark.
How many people do you think were just slaughtered?
Millions.
Yeah.
Millions died for this.
Kids, women, children. Yeah.
Especially women.
Yeah.
A lot of women that they considered witches. It all connects to the whole thing. That's why they were all burned at the stake. And so a witch is just someone who's practicing natural law. So, okay, now that we've established that, if you don't have what I'm giving and explaining here, civilization will always become disconnected to itself and destroy itself. Ryan, can you now pull up, we'll start with natural law. Can you read for me just what natural law is for everybody?
Natural law refers to the inherent principles that govern nature and reality, independent of human authority or belief. These laws are not created, but discovered, revealed through pattern, proportion, and cause and effect observable throughout the natural world. Bullet points. Universal principles embedded in nature itself, exist independently of culture, belief, or power, observable through pattern, proportion, and order, govern cycles, balance, and cause and effect, expressed across scales from cosmos to human systems, understood through reason, observation, and synthesis.
So what they're saying is that all Hermeticism comes from an understanding of natural law. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
How things function, how it works. So those are the components that go into this. Now imagine where science is right now. We're not even close to this. They're looking at the universe in these little pieces trying to understand it, and it's not about that. Now, before I get into that part, Ryan, why don't you go ahead and pull up fractals, because now that's the next part I think we need to explain. All of this is necessary for this understanding. Okay. Yeah, can you do the same thing for me, Matt?
Fractal geometry describes patterns in nature that repeat across different scales, where the structure of the whole is reflected in its parts rather than linear or isolated forms. Fractals reveal a universe built on self-similarity, recursion, and nested order visible from the microscopic to the cosmic. Bullet points. Patterns repeat across multiple scales. The part reflects the whole. Structures are recursive, not linear. Found throughout nature, plants, rivers, coastlines, galaxies, emphasizes relationships and proportions, not symmetry alone. Fractals show that complexity emerges from repeating rules.
Exactly. Thank you. Ryan, now go ahead and pull up. I have 2 fractal slides there. I want to talk about this for a minute. Doesn't matter which one you pull up first. Here we go. Yeah, okay. They encoded all of this into their teachings. They encoded all of this, that Kef bas relief, all of these symbols, everything comes into a cohesive understanding of the universe, okay? But that understanding is never separate from the path of us. That's the thing I really want to point out. It's not about understanding how the universe works and then ignoring us. We are an essential component of that. In fact, we may be the entire reflection of the universe experiencing itself here right now. The show might be this. The great show is this. Doesn't mean this is happening and repeating everywhere else. Doesn't necessarily mean that. Why? Because of what's called the triptych. It's a very specific components of 3 that are repeated, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But just remember the triptych concept and how that applies, because it's not something that is random. So the first thing I want to explain and show, a lot of people have seen things like this, but let's tie it all together. There is no separation between us and the universe. A nebula forming looks like an eye, like a galaxy. A lung looks like a tree. A human hand looks like a tree ring. The death of a star and the birth of a cell and everything, there is no separation. It is just on a fractal scale of everything else. You want to expand even further. That's why a hurricane looks like a galaxy and a shell and a pine cone. Pine cone, you know why a pine cone was used? Because it represents sacred geometry in the all. And if, the more and more you look at it, the more it repeats. And that's what the entire universe is. It's an entire repeating fractal. Now, what does that mean? Well, they explain to us and they have us understand that the entire universe is a giant source field of consciousness. Now we're going to get into the high level. Their understanding is that there is no separation. That's why evolution always follows specific patterns, because it's tying into a code, a source code that's all the same.
So let me just ask, things are fractals, and so we're sending telescopes out into the, we're looking out into the galaxy. We're seeing the universe as it exists right now from a physical standpoint. When we look out into the galaxy, are we looking into the cosmos? Are we looking into the right door, or are we just looking at the cosmos as it exists?
Well, don't forget, the cosmos is always going to have physical manifestation. So the middle door is physical manifestation. It's you're still looking at all three no matter what. Okay, because there's the underworld is a realm of reality, just like the celestial higher realms are realms of reality. Okay, just because we can look up and see the sky and the stars doesn't mean that you're observing the celestial higher realms. You're observing physical reality manifested above and below. We're talking about realms of reality that we don't have access to unless we have very specific means.
So that being the case, then it's pretty interesting to think about that galaxy being a fractal and being alive, as you said.
Yes, everything's living.
Everything's alive.
Everything's alive.
So that galaxy is alive, and on a smaller scale, that galaxy is something else, and it's also alive, and on a smaller scale that we can't see. So we get to go down into the atoms of our bodies, and then we go down into what's ever smaller than those. And you're saying that this reality that we live within is not a horizontal physical reality. It's more of like a vertical fractal reality where consciousness exists at extraordinarily small sizes relative to what we are existing at, and consciousness exists we are a part of some consciousness that is much bigger than us.
Yes. Yeah. They explain that everything has consciousness and everything is alive. Every planet, everything. That's why a crystal, that's why Nikola Tesla thought it was alive. Everything has a form of consciousness. Everything is moving. Everything is a part of the greater all. So they explain, for instance, consciousness, the reason it follows a certain form, and the reason why animals are not really changing anymore. The reason why a giraffe doesn't change into a lion is because they have a predetermined code they follow. It's a code of source. It's embedded in everything. This might help people understand. When people take, for instance, high levels of DMT, they always say the exact same thing, right? And same with psilocybin, they see geometric designs repeating. They're looking at the structural foundation of the universe. That is what the universe is. There is no emptiness. There is no isolation from consciousness. Let's put it this way. The reason why we need to turn our body into a temple is that we become an antenna that taps into source field. That's what it is. It's not independent. It's not separate. It's all part of the exact same thing.
How do we lose sight of it? Like it's Schumann resonance, essentially, yes. I guess, right? I mean, we're tapping into that, and that is, and when you take psychedelics or whatever, that lowers your frequency into theta, and you tap into the natural frequency of the planet, and you do seem to, people report all the time getting these downloads of information, and
because you're dialed in now.
Yeah, right, yeah. right. You're totally dialed into to nature and to the world around you and to things around you and to the life that exists around you. You're just dialed in, like almost from a telepathic standpoint, and it's interesting because it's bringing you to that Schumann resonance and
equilibrium, man.
Equilibrium,
That's
right?
it.
You're at balance, but is it the Is it what got us away from that? You know, it's the human dysfunction, I guess.
No,
right?
we lost all this.
Yeah,
we forgot it all.
But our brains are operating at a different frequency than they would have in the past, right?
Which is why I think we're so disconnected.
Yeah, and is it because mind has taken over and spirit is dead? I mean, is it?
Well, let me explain it this way. This might help. There is a predetermined destiny for all of this. This is not random. There is no randomness to it. Everything follows cycles. Remember that. Everything in the universe follows cycles. And the cycle that they describe it as being like the hero's journey, as a fractal not only for the internal, but for also humanity, potentially even the entire universe. There is no separation. What is occurring to us is occurring outward. We are just a mirror. So what it means is that once we connect, or I should say it this way, we start from a place of purity where we know everything and we're connected back to source. And the whole idea and the purpose, it's very purposeful behind it, is that you wander and disconnect and lose everything. It's necessary. It's a journey. And then certain things happen, and out of the darkness, you transform like a phoenix. That's why it's always been used, into another form. Just as humanity is the fractal of our own story, we must die to be reborn again. I caution people, they're going to see similarities in what I just said for a certain story that I'm not going to bring up. But there's a journey story of knowing everything, becoming disconnected, wandering, then just the old you dying, and then transforming and resurrecting back up into a higher form. It repeats itself over and over again. That's the whole point, is that we're supposed to be doing that. And then we're supposed to find our way back too.
Okay.
And the beauty is that Matt, this is the beauty behind it. The further away we go, and the more chance it is that we won't find our way back, the more exciting that story is when we do. It's a galactic story. It's just like Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage. Well, we're the stage of the universe. Act accordingly. So that's, to me, it's profound what our existence is. So I think we should bring it all together now. We should bring it all together.
Let's do it.
You look at Aynais, you look at Napa and Glacia, you look at Egypt. What are we looking at here? What is all this? It's a gigantic mystery school, but it's never for one reason. There's a whole bunch of other components to it, including technological. And I think that this is where we can get into this, because look, people are going to be listening to this and say, oh, great. So now we know how to function and live, but what now? Well, we were never supposed to be them, but we were supposed to take the best parts of them. And look at this world we have today. We have AI and robotics that can essentially replace a lot of the trivial, silly things that we were doing. Well, now that frees us, doesn't it? It frees us up. Frees us up to do other things. At the same time, here we are in the very verge of our own, what I consider destruction of our world and everything around us, disconnecting the furthest we've ever been because of technology. And yet, at the very edge of oblivion is where that candle refuses to go out. And that flicker reemerges at the last moment where you thought it never could. And that's the beauty behind all of it. It really is. And so let's go over...
Yeah, you got to buy the dips.
Let's go over what this means. It means that this civilization that existed here, if we wanted to recreate them, they understood that you must, number one, now listen to these rules for humanity, ready? Number one, you must live in balance and equilibrium with Earth, with nature, and the universe. However that is, meaning we have to discontinue using asphalt, concrete, 100% in metal. They are evil for our connection in our world. And yet today, like 90% of structures are built with cement. They fall apart in like 40 years. They're horrible. They're disconnected. There's nothing natural about them.
Cement, metal, asphalt, all three, you're saying?
Well, cement and asphalt are pretty similar, yeah. But yes, those need to be discontinued, number one. We can only, according to this blueprint, we can only use either stone, glass, or wood. They understood that. You never disconnect something from being dead. You always want everything to be a synergy of being alive. So you never want that disconnection of anything. Right. Number one. Number two, they understood that whatever the focus means of all should be on the acquisition of knowledge and wisdom, period. That is the path. There is nothing greater. And so the whole world ended up, as from what I can see, had these nodes that were giant mystery schools. But they also functioned as balancers. And they also functioned as a type of technology to realms and potentially star connections, which we'll get to in a second.
Okay.
So imagine a student was to go to start maybe in Vaughan, and they have to go through Chavez Tepe first. It's a school, right? You got to graduate from the lower Susi Temple, and then just as the fractal journey from below to the above, you graduate the upper one. Then you get to go to Kef Kalesi and get to go to the underwater ruins, and then all of it becomes like a fractal teaching school. And what's so beautiful is that the two symbols repeating the altar, life and light, well, the underwater ruins just so happens to be, and you brought it up if you want to pull it up really quick. But yeah, Ryan, can you pull up the underwater ruins picture? It's a perfect circle. They designed it to be a fractal of the concept itself. The circle of life is that. It happens to be in the bottom of the, not that one, the one where I'm diving. We'll get to that one next. Do that one right after though. So basically, they understood it as you design the actual temple to represent its function and that there is no separation between the two. And so when I saw that, and then I saw all the components of structural reality manifested as the cosmogram in real life. What do I mean by that? The underworld water temple is the underworld temple. That's why it's a circle, and it's on the bottom of the lake.
Is it actually at the, because this is one of the deepest lakes in the world.
Well, not the bottom, but it's on a lower, it's the lowest most point.
What's the
representing
depth?
The underworld?
What's the depth?
It's at, it's between 30 and 80 feet. So then on the mountain above it, you get Kef Kalesi that represents physical structure of reality. Ryan, just go ahead and pull up the one you had on before. It's okay. We need, because we're on that one now. Then at Aynais, you then get the celestial higher realms. How do we know that? Because each site has a different kind of flower. Once I realized this, it was the most beautiful poetic thing in the world. Aynais' flower is a solar flower to the above, the celestial.
Yeah.
The underwater ruins are seeds. They're seeds of the tree of life.
Wow.
Because that's where nature, the origin of nature is. It's the underworld. Then, Kef Kalesi, tetrahedrons. Why tetrahedrons, Matt? Structure. Structure of physical reality. Each temple is a manifestation they created of the structure of reality itself. It's amazing. And then we want to go the next level. Ryan, go ahead and pull up the pyramids. Now this is what everyone's going to be the most excited about. Because everyone's always the most excited about this, and I'm going to spell this out in a way that's not fantastic, but actually quite realistic. I know everyone's seen this, and again, you see the three repeating again, too. Like 3 main pyramids, 3 smaller pyramids. There is no accident in that. Now, let me explain how some of the technology in this works. This is not just mystery schools. Remember, it's not only about one thing, it's about the all. It is never only one thing. Now, this is where it gets very exciting. Because not only do we have a new structural blueprint of the universe and understanding Hermeticism and how everything works and functions, which would be enough already, but they also left us behind fundamental technologies to bridge the stars. We need to stop with what we're trying to do with flying to planets and create. This is ridiculous. They left us technologies that can help us do those things on a level that we can understand. It was never about separating technology from consciousness. I want to point that out. And it was never about separating technology from the natural elements and what is a part of the all. You don't create something that's not alive. These stones are all alive. The Great Pyramid of Giza on the right side, 2.5 million stone blocks, each one carefully cut and placed. Do you think that's an accident to be at perfectly half ratio of our Earth? Now, let's get into this. They believed that the Earth was very specifically chosen because it's existing in a triptych system. Now, try to ignore the other planets for a minute and try to imagine all the planets are there for balancers. That's basically what their purpose is. The real focus of the triptych is Earth, Moon, and Sun. That was their entire obsession and focus. They understood every other planet was just a balancer. That's it. That's what their purpose is. To protect this internal system, you needed all of those balancers in place. Now, they understood that the first triptych was not actually the Earth, Sun, the Moon, though. Ryan, can you pull up the 3 circles that represent the 3 sides of a human really quick? And then we'll jump right back to this after. Thank you. So they realized that there was no separation at all between any of these concepts, and that internally within us, we had the triptych of the all. So that all in religion, you know it as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. That's what they turned it into. But originally, it's meant to be the body, the mind, and the spirit, which, if brought all together, create the ultimate awareness and the ultimate connection. Notice that all three also represent the three realms of reality. Think about it for a minute. There is no separation. Three aspects of us, three aspects of what reality is. Remember? Physical reality, the body, the celestial higher realms. Which one would that be?
The spirit.
Mind.
Mind. Oh, okay.
Mind.
Right.
Mind is God. It's always considered. And then spirit. Here's where this is going to be the hard one for people. Spirit is represented as coming and being a part of the underworld. It's essential. That's why grounding is so important. All of that stuff. We need to separate hell and all these horrible things. The underworld is the source of spirit, of most knowledge. I won't say all. Most knowledge, all of life, all of balance, incarnation. It seems to all be there.
And the reason that that's more difficult to catch, I guess, is because you're referring to the body as a temple and the spirit within, and so it's like it's not as if the underground is actually within the temple.
Exactly.
Right.
That's why you have to do all the inner work to grow in along this path and journey. So this is essential for us to understand because there's three beautiful triptychs that I'm going to go over right now. With the fourth, you can go ahead and close that one and just go back to the pyramids, Ryan. Okay, let's stay on this now. Okay, so remember. The first triptych is us, but put that aside for just a second and just pin that. First thing they recognized is that in order to create a synergy of the universe, you have to mirror it. So what they did is they recognized and they very specifically designed the three great pyramids to represent exact ratio representations of the Earth, Sun, the Moon, period. That's what they are. So when you look at each one of them, you can then not only take them and match Earth, Sun, and Moon, but you can also match body, mind, and spirit, right? There's no separation. That's what they represent. So they did that because they needed to create the Great Pyramid to be a ratio to be Earth. The Great Pyramid represents Earth. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay. Then you have the other two pyramids that represent the other two sides, which are the moon and the sun. And that's why in Teotihuacan, the other side of the world, you have three pyramids that represent the exact same thing. It's always been the same thing. Now you have the three representations as a mirror on Earth to be Earth, Sun, and the Moon, designed very specifically. So then above it, you have the actual Earth, Sun, and the Moon, right? And then the last triptych is Orion's belt, the three belt stars of Orion. This system, Earth and our solar system and our galaxy it may be one of the only perfect triptychs, trinary system like that combines all three, which is why all this may have happened here. You see what I'm saying?
I think so.
Meaning that if you go through the whole cosmos, you have to try to find a planet that then has an Earth, Sun, and the Moon ratio that then has a three belt star of Orion ratio that's perfectly representative. It had to be that for all this.
Okay.
So now go back to the pyramids for me really quick. So you have all three of the triptychs, but 3 doesn't complete it. 4 does. Why 4? The cross at Aynais is 4. It represents the balance of the all. It is the everything. It is the all. 3 becomes the 4, but only with one specific component. Because think about it. You have the 3 pyramids. You have the Earth, Sun, the Moon, and then Orion's belt. They're all perfectly synergized. What are you missing?
Humanity?
The human. The initiate that goes in, right? Goes inside there. Probably I don't want to speculate which one, but they go in, maybe all of them. And if they're balanced, which is why the Valley Temple is right there, because it's a school. They have to go into the Valley Temple way before they go in there. They have to go in the Valley Temple, reach equilibrium, reach the balance, understand how everything works, then they can go in there. I don't think these were willy-nilly open to everybody. I think they were highly specific as part of schools, as part of initiates. And so what do they create? Consciousness, completely open with the triptych and balanced, merges with the limestone insulation. We're going to talk about mineralization here, guys. Mineralization. The limestone, the granite, all of it's not an accident. All of it is very on purpose. It has to do with the different resonant frequency fields that connect. It's a technology. So the human goes in, you have these perfect ratios designed to be the earth, moon, the sun with specific type of stone, mineralization. They then create a synergy between Orion and they create what we have wanted to find for so long. They create a stargate that humanity's been searching for so long. A stargate, but not for the physical body, for consciousness. It's a gateway. It's a gateway to open up to bridge the entire all. Now, what that unlocks, I don't know. But here's what I want to say, and this is the message to reiterate. If this information gets in front of some high-level people, like we can get a group together like Brian Cox and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Nassim Haramein and a few other people, this is game over. We can just completely shift this entire world. Or we can just go through the slow process of trickling it through and seeing how it goes. It does not, whichever way it goes, this will change all of humanity. There is no putting this back now. There is no putting it back. But what it also means is not only do we incorporate their entire philosophies and worldview and incorporate all of it into the blueprint to develop a new world, but it means that we can create the technologies to bridge the stars. It's never been about a spaceship. The spaceship was always us in consciousness. Mm-hmm. And we can create that synergy that once existed, that balanced the all. And we can reharmonize everything again. And then we can do what has always been talked about all throughout history, which is bridging heaven and earth. And allowing the synergy that once existed to come again. And then you know what we become?
One with God, one with the universe. We become
what we were meant to all along.
Yeah.
And this darkness that we've been living in for thousands of years, killing and destroying each other and destroying this planet and this world, that nightmare is about to end. We're about to wake up like it's been a bad dream. If humanity listening to this, people listening, feel how disconnected everything is and how everything is wrong, it's because it is. We're living in a complete inverse of what we're supposed to in every way. And the beauty behind it is that it's not too late. It's not too late to change course. This ship that we're sailing on in the ocean, all we need to do is just change course.
And what does it take? What do we do? What do we do to do it?
We have to increment it slowly. It's not about tearing systems down in chaos. It's about dusting off the temple underneath and realizing it's been there all along. We don't need to start over. We need to transform. We need to incorporate what matters most with starting by protecting our earth, understanding our connection to it, bringing back the morals of philosophy, Hermeticism. It's not about trying to turn someone into being evil. It's about correcting the wrongs that have happened in this world.
And do you see this as a slow, gradual transition? Do you see this as something that might take some sort of a catastrophe to rebound from and get to this? Or how do you see this really manifesting over time?
Timing is everything. Imagine it's always been like a metaphor of a seed, a sapling growing. If you plant it at the wrong time, it won't grow. It won't germinate. If it doesn't have the right environment, it will be stunted. Everything has to be just right for the seed to be planted. That's where humanity is right now. There are millions around the world who are already studying Hermeticism. It has already been a movement that has been growing. You study Hermeticism.
I haven't studied it. No, I don't know.
Or you at least know of it.
The parts about it that I've heard about and that I understand resonate, and they make sense. But I haven't gone very deep.
But what I mean is this has already been growing and is ready for this. I absolutely think humanity is ready. And I think that the transformation with this will happen much more rapidly and seamlessly than people think.
Okay. So that's the solution then. That's the solution for humanity.
We can use this blueprint, which again, I laid everything out. Every piece of model, every piece of this is in the book so that it can never be lost again, regardless of what happens to me, is that we can now rebuild this entire thing. And I want to this is a call out for the world right here. I can't do this alone. This is far beyond me. We need every engineer, every sacred geometry expert, every philosopher, every architect on this to help. This is the moment where humanity can truly shine again.
Love it, man. Very powerful. I mean, I guess, in terms of just closing, kind of wrap up and, maybe close some loops a little bit more, I guess the technology standpoint, or the technology conversation for me, if this is unlocked and we're able to go back to some golden age that existed and it was a more technologically advanced age.
In certain ways, yeah.
In certain ways, exactly. Yeah, not electronics.
Like natural law technology.
Right. Now, what does that look like? What does that technology look like?
It means that we need to stop doing most of what we think is the direction of technology, and we need to take a different direction.
Understood.
We need to understand natural law. We need to understand the piezoelectric. There's the buzzword, right? Piezoelectric properties of these stones, and then understand how if you work with natural law. Let me break down some of the technology. I think it's important right now. They understood that number one, you had to have things aligned to cardinal points, northeast, southwest, period. You had to have things aligned to the stars. You had to have certain ratios to map above and below. You then had to have specific stones used that would have certain piezoelectric properties. You then had to place them in geometric designs that represented that structure of the universe, which is why those cosmograms are designed into it. They're all fundamental components. And then you must understand then that 3, 6, and 9 is basically the answers to the universe, and that it is how everything fractals and repeats and how we have to design it. Once we incorporate all of that and see what they've built, we can back engineer all of it and we can create it again. We can fuse this technology with the stars and become something far greater than we ever imagined.
What do you think the most technologically advanced thing that they were doing back then was? I mean, building these structures, of course, we know that those are there, right? But what else was the tech? Were they flying? Were they, did they have, what?
I don't think any of that is relevant. I really don't. That's just speculation on this part.
Yeah.
The blueprint only lets me go so far. It lets me understand certain things, but there's still things I don't know.
Okay.
And one of those is that I don't know how far things went.
Well, you got your whole life to figure this
Right.
out, right? But I mean, the tech in general, though, I wonder what it could potentially lead to if it was worked on for thousands of years.
Let me just lay this out.
Yeah.
I will say this. Let's ignore Giza for a minute with the Stargate. That's another kind of technology. Ionis is also another kind of technology. Now, both of those Susi temples used to be functioning as the primary, what I 100% believe is I've looked at this, they are what we call realm gateways. So it's a little different than Giza. That's like a star gateway, outward, right? So instead of outward, these seem to be literal realm gateways. And I mean that because it's a giant T that you lay down on. Everything has specifics to either celestial or underworld component. Everything follows in it. The stones are all very specific. Everything is very intentional. The Susi temples have to either face the rising to the setting sun. So for instance, the celestial Susi temple has to face west. It has to. The underworld Susi temple, if we were to rebuild it, and no, Matt does not want to build a gateway to hell. Let me just state that. I want to build a gateway. I want to rebuild the Susi temple that was destroyed to open up the realm that we used to have once to the underworld. That's what it was. How do you think Gilgamesh got to the underworld? He went through Ionis. There is no other realm gate we know of that has that technology. He went there, was once known, and he met up with Zayasudra, and Zayasudra told him everything and gave him everything. And then he came back and squandered it, and then we lost everything. We were never meant to just look at these things. We were meant to rebuild them.
It's beautiful, Matt. It's a beautiful theory, and I know it's going to evolve, and you're going to build upon it, and you're going to grow it and change, and you'll find more evidence and more photos and more sites to kind of support and bring the theory to the public. I think it's fascinating, man, and it's new and it's unique and different and very well thought out. You're obviously you won the most passionate award for Matt Beall Limitless in 2025.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. So that was pretty cool, and I think that just came out like last week, and then here we are back. So I love your passion. I love how deep you get into this, and if you don't do that, then you don't find answers. So congratulations on everything that you've done. Your travels, your success, the books, the information, the knowledge that you're sharing with people can make a huge difference with people. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's a lot in there that I think. I mean, if people, I was just talking about this the other day with somebody that I know. If we have these kind of repetitive stuff that we go through every day, we turn right at this whatever every day, or we get coffee in the morning. Maybe we just turn left, or maybe we just don't get coffee. Maybe we just do something.
Maybe you just follow intuition and see where it leads you.
Completely different. Yeah, exactly. And
that's the guidance system I wanted to point out for everybody in case they're wondering.
Right.
Get out of the logical mind and go into your intuition and listen to it. That's a whole nother conversation. But
it is
a metaphysical conversation.
Yeah, for sure. But I like what you're doing here, and it's really cool because if we don't explore new ideas and new concepts, and this is a pretty boring place to be. So this has been fascinating for me, man.
Thank you. It brings back what humanity I think needs most instead of Band-Aids. It was never about trying to have people understand aspects of philosophy and spirituality. It's about the all. People need a reason to care.
Right.
This is the reason to bring them back, is that, look, I didn't say this, but this is super important that we go over this. Humanity understands itself through the lens of emerging 6,500 years ago as empires battling and killing each other and fighting. That was our definition of how we've defined who we are. That's why when Darwin was trying to understand evolution, the only thing he could compare it to was ants fighting and battling, because that's the only thing in nature that did that. Because what we became is not at all what we were supposed to be. So there was no way for him to understand what our place is here. This brings back meaning to everything. It shows that we're a divine being of the universe, that we're a reflection of the all, and that this is a place where consciousness is supposed to blossom and transform in its highest form. And then each one of us has codes to that. Each one of us is following a journey of the higher expression and discovery that is the all. And that makes every single day a gift to be able to walk and to be able to breathe and look up at the sun and to put your hands on the ground with this earth and realize you get to be here for the greatest show that exists in the universe. And that's what we should remember every day.
Matt, I don't know how we could close that out any better, man. I mean, that's really, really beautifully said, really well said. And it's just a absolute pleasure and honor to have you here today, and to have, for you to have chosen Limitless to come on and share this, which I know you are 10 out of 10 pumped up about and excited about, and, going to be spending decades on now. I think that there's something there.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here talking to you, and honestly, the work has just begun.
Yep. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it with that, man. We'll do it again sometime for sure. Yep.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Yes, sir.